Channel Africa represents every corner of this amazing land. From Lagos to Cape Town, Nairobi to Dakar, we've got you covered with the freshest news, music, and cultures. So, turn up the volume, feel the rhythm. Enjoy the conversation. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Thanks. Happy New Week, happy New Day, everybody. This is Channel Africa, where we broadcast all news and current affairs, well, for the next 3 hours here, at least, on Rise and Shine from the African perspective. We're coming to you live from our Johannesburg studios in South Africa. My name is Asanda Beda. Of course, we are together, as I say, for the next 3 hours, so lots to cover. We'll be talking Nigeria today. We'll be talking around the Central African region stories, and also, of course, coming up is the Roundup Wrap. That's what we do on Mondays, and we have our resident analyst there to help us unpack some stories that have taken place throughout the weekend, some from last week that you may have missed, and we get you up to date on what you need to know in and around our continent of Africa. Let's get to the news first. Here's Onele Nzinzi, and then following her will be sports headlines with Musibudi Makura.
SABC News. The African perspective.
Well, good morning, Asanda, and a very good morning to our listeners. Negotiations aimed at restoring peace in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo have dragged on for months in the Qatari capital of Doha, stalled by disagreements between the Congolese government and the M23 rebels over key demands to end the conflict. The deadlock has triggered renewed fighting in North and South Kivu, worsening the already dire humanitarian crisis. Chris Okamringa reports from Kinshasa.
Delegates from the Congolese government and the M23 rebel group are holding talks in Qatar aimed at ending years of conflict in eastern DRC. But even as negotiations continue, fighting has flared up again, violating a ceasefire and threatening to derail the peace process. Each side blames the other for renewed attacks and has vowed to retaliate. Many Congolese citizens say they want peace, but not at any price.
Tanzania's main opposition party, Chadema, has rejected President Samia Suluhu Hassan's landslide victory in elections, triggering deadly protests over the exclusion of key challengers. Chadema, which was barred from the election for refusing to sign a code of conduct and whose leader, Tundu Lissu, was arrested for treason, claimed the results were completely fabricated and that citizens did not participate in the election. However, the government has not responded to Chadema's statement. The World Health Organization has raised an alarm over the rising cases of mpox in the continent. 17 African countries have reported ongoing transmission in the past few weeks. The WHO says 2,862 cases have been reported and 17 deaths recorded in the last month. The virus, previously known as the monkeypox, has also been detected for the first time in Malaysia, Namibia, the Netherlands, Portugal, and Spain. The South African government has welcomed the court ruling that the death of Nobel laureate Albert Luthuli was a result of an assault by the apartheid police, overturning decades of claims that it was an accident. The former African National Congress leader died in 1967, and an inquest held under the apartheid government concluded that Luthuli died after being struck by a freight train while walking along a railway line. The Pietermaritzburg High Court has overturned this judgment, saying the inquest was riddled with lies. The Deputy President Paul Mashatile says it was correct for the government to reopen the case earlier this year.
We welcome that, and I do hope that the authorities will leave no stone unturned to get to the truth.
And lastly, police in Britain have arrested 2 men after a mass stabbing attack on a train in eastern England. Police were called to Hangington Station in Cambridgeshire, where the train made an emergency stop after passengers alerted the crew. Witnesses described bloodied victims running down the aisle to escape a man with a large knife. Police say 10 people were taken to hospital, 9 of them with life-threatening injuries. Dean McFellen explains.
I see a guy hanging out the train door bleeding. As I look further up the platform, I see people running down the platform, panicking and bleeding. And that's when I heard someone shout, he's coming, he's coming. And I see a guy suddenly running down in a black hoodie. I can't tell whether that was one of the attackers or whether that was one of the victims. So obviously I grabbed a load of people, just said to them, please get out the station, go, go, go.
For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Sinsi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, the draw of the CAF Interclub competitions will take place today in Johannesburg, South Africa, while India are crowned world champions in the ODI women's cricket. Details coming up at the bottom of the hour.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
6 minutes past 6 Central African Time. A very good morning to you if you've just joined us. It's a Monday morning. It's
Happy New Week, Happy New Day.
Mate, Happy New Month.
Happy New Month, yes.
Can you believe that it's November,
November.
already? The 11th month of the year. It is shocking to me.
Yeah.
This year's gone by at a speed faster than I've known before. Maybe it's because I'm a little bit older. I don't know. What do you think it is?
I think the older you get, the faster the days go, the faster the months go, the faster the years go.
My dad used to say that all the time, but I didn't believe him.
Yeah, now
Here
you
we
see
are.
it, you experience it. What are you grateful for this week?
I'm going to the gym.
Are you grateful that you started your fitness journey?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right, let's take a look at the Africa Roundup. Now, this is the section of the show every day after the 6 o'clock news. We take a look at some of the news items and events that have taken place in the last 24 hours across the continent and beyond through our journalists, correspondents, and sometimes analysts, putting it all into perspective for us in a concise manner to get you up to date and set up for the news day ahead. And we begin in East Africa, where Tanzania's President Samia Suluhu Hassan was confirmed on Saturday as the decisive winner of an election that sparked a deadly protest last week over the exclusion of her main opponents. According to the country's electoral commission, Hassan secured more than 31.9 million votes, and that represents 98% of the total vote.
The result hands Hassan a 5-year term to govern the East African country of 68 million people, which she has led since the death of her predecessor in 2021. Protests erupted on Wednesday, with demonstrators angry that Hassan's 2 biggest challengers were excluded by the Electoral Commission on what they described as widespread repression. Tanzania's main opposition party said on Friday that hundreds of people had been killed in the protests. Saif Magango from the UN Human Rights Office said credible reports indicated at least 10 people were killed in 3 cities.
We are alarmed by the deaths and injuries that have occurred in the ongoing election-related protests in Tanzania.
The government has dismissed the opposition's death toll as hugely exaggerated and has rejected criticism of its human rights record.
The UN fact-finding mission on Sudan has raised serious alarm over escalating atrocities following the capture of El Fasher by the Rapid Support Forces, or RSF. The mission gathered direct, harrowing testimonies from survivors exposing systematic and ongoing attacks on civilians. Its latest report documents a devastating pattern of abuses by both sides in the conflict. Mona Rishmawi, a member of the UN Independent International Fact-Finding Mission on Sudan, provides further insight.
For more than 2.5 years, we've been documenting serious violations of human rights and IHL by the Sudanese armed forces and the Rapid Response Forces. Torture, murder, summary execution, sexual violence are only a few of the main violations that are taking place. We are also documenting attacks on infrastructure that is vital to the survival of the civilian population. Hospitals, markets, water stations have been destroyed by both the warring parties, and of course, homes and properties looted. The Rapid Response Force also attacked and displaced entire communities, often based on ethnic grounds.
Fighters on camels reportedly rounded up several hundred men near the Sudanese city of Al Fasher, taking them to a reservoir, shouting racial slurs and opening fire. And that's according to one man who said he was among those targeted but managed to escape. Eyewitness accounts from nearby Tawila add to reports of abuses by the Rapid Support Forces paramilitaries during their takeover of Al Fasher from the Sudanese army. Lucy Fielder takes us through the story.
Al-Khair Ismail says he was among a couple of hundred men rounded up near Al Fasher on October 26. Ismail, speaking to a local journalist in nearby Tawila, says he was allowed to flee because a fighter recognized him. He and the other men were unarmed, he says. There was a young man I studied with in the University of Khartoum, he says. He told them, don't kill him. After that, they killed the rest of the people, the youths who were with me and my friends. Reuters could not immediately verify his account. He was one of 4 such witnesses and 6 aid workers interviewed by Reuters.
As the countdown begins to the G20 summit in South Africa, the Department of International Relations and Cooperation is hosting the G20 Presidency Outreach Program in Abuja, Nigeria. This marks the first time the G20 will be held on African soil, coinciding with the African Union's new status as a full member of the forum. DIRCO Acting Chief Director for Regional Organizations, Ben Joubert, has more from Abuja.
This is very important from a substantive point of view and also in terms of our President Cyril Ramaphosa's original commitment to Africa when we first announced that we will host the G20 summit of leaders for the first time on the African continent. So both in terms of that promise and in terms of the issues that we will discuss in the event on industrialization, on agriculture, those issues are extremely important to us. As you would know, one of the high-level deliverables that we have in our G20 presidency speaks to the issue of food security. So this links in very closely to the issues that are dear to the continent, to Africa: food security, sustainable finance or debt sustainability. All those issues are important, and this outreach to Abuja, to Nigeria, as an invited country during our G20 presidency is therefore extremely important to us.
As the countdown begins to the G20 summit in South Africa, the Department of International Relations and Cooperation in the country is hosting the G20 Presidency Outreach Program in Abuja, Nigeria. Now, this marks the first time that the G20 will be held on African soil, coinciding with the African Union's new status as a full member of the forum. The Department of International Relations and Cooperation, DIRCO's Acting Chief Director for Regional Organization, is Ben Joubert. We've just done that story, haven't we? Yeah, fascinating. Are you looking forward to the G20 summit, Asanda?
I think we were talking about it on Friday with Benjamin, because they were also talking about some issues around that.
Yeah.
I guess.
I wonder, though, if the general populace is interested. They hear about it, but I don't know if they make the connection between this summit, what's been going on throughout the course of this year, and what it might mean for their lives. And maybe as the media, we're not doing enough to make the connection for them. That's the sense I'm getting.
And I mean, there's a lot happening on the continent as well with the elections going on. I think we should all, be excited that we are hosting it for the first time as a continent. But then there's also the other side of, people are kind of tired and they're not really excited about.
So you're defending the media.
No. Okay, I agree with both parts of that argument. Well, coming up, we're going to delve deeper into some of the stories that have taken place over the weekend. We get into our roundup wrap here on Rise and Shine, and some of the stories will be from last week, and we speak to our resident analyst for that in-depth look, so stay tuned.
Zilipendwa. Leo tujadili kuhusu chipukizi wanaoimba nyimbo za wasanii wengine. Unadhani hili linatokana na nini, Omari?
Nadhani kweli kwamba tukizama muziki ya sasa hasa wasanii ambao ni chipukizi, kwa kweli kwamba karibu kutoka muziki wao wenyewe, lakini wanakuwa wanapenda kuhubiria muziki ya zamani hizo muziki ya wengine ambao ni taimbo.
Wengine wanadai kufanya hivyo ni kupromote vipaji vyao haraka ili waweze kujulikana. Je, yawezekana kukawa na ukweli wowote au ndio kukosa kabisa kipaji cha kuandika mistari?
Ndio, unaona kwamba msanii anapoazimia kwamba kuchukua wimbo mwingine wa msanii mwingine na kurudia mara mbili sivyo, haionyeshi kwamba ndio wanaanza kazi ya muziki aidha, lakini ukiangalia kabisa asilimia kubwa utakuja kuona kwamba wanakosa ile mawazo ya kutunga muziki.
Zilipendwa kila Jumamosi kuanzia saa 12 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati hadi saa 1 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
Ready to connect, innovate, and be inspired? It's all happening at Africa's Tech Festival, where Africa's technology meets the world. From the 10th to the 13th of November in Cape Town, join global leaders, investors, and innovators driving the future of Africa's digital economy. Don't miss the continent's biggest week in tech. Get your pass now at africatechfestival.com.
The sound of Africa is evolving. Experience our new mobile app. Free to download, free to connect. New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa. This is
Channel Africa. Je, una jambo lolote akilini mwako? Je, una shauku kuhusu masuala muhimu? Na je, una maoni ambayo unataka yasikike? Kweli, hili jukwaa ni la kwako. Piga simu au tuandikie kwenda WhatsApp namba alama ya kujumulisha 2760552594 na tutakupigia simu.
Mtangazaji wa habari zetu za Afrika Kusini mjini Johannesburg.
Hivyo unaweza kuwa mshirika kwenye matangazo yetu. Sio mazungumzo tu, ni fursa yako ya kuchangia maoni yako na kushirikiana na jumuiya ya wasikilizaji wanaotamani mtazamo wako. Tufuate kwenye mitandao ya kijamii. Tembelea tovuti yetu www.channelafrica.co.za na uwe tayari kushiriki na kuchangia maoni yako kwenye Channel Africa. Channel Africa, mtazamo wa Kiafrika.
Gratitude begins with a story. Find yours on Channel Africa. Now streaming on our new website and mobile app. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Right, just before we go to Mighty Jamie and Asanda, let's take a look at this story. The United Nations has called for an immediate ceasefire in Al Fasher, the capital of Sudan's northern Darfur region, following its capture by the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. Now, the UN has warned that the fall of the city marks a dangerous turning point in Sudan's civil war, which has already claimed tens of thousands of lives. Channel Africa's Lebohang Mabange picks up the story for us.
The United Nations says the conflict in Sudan is worsening with new waves of violence and deepening humanitarian suffering. Speaking at the UN Security Council briefing, Assistant Secretary General for Africa, Martha Ama Akia-Pobi, painted a grim picture of the situation on the ground.
The conflict in Sudan has deteriorated even further. It has caused widespread suffering and new surges of horrific violence. After more than 500 days under siege, the city of El Fasher in North Darfur has been captured by the Rapid Support Forces. Only small pockets of resistance remain. Other parts of the country have not been spared from the relentless violence. In recent weeks, fighting has intensified in the Kordofan region.
Pobi said civilians are facing unimaginable hardship with communications cut off and widespread reports of atrocities.
Communications have been cut off. The situation is chaotic. In this context, it is difficult to estimate the number of civilians killed. Despite commitments to protect civilians, the reality is that no one is safe in El Fasher.
The UN warns that the fighting is spreading to new regions and the risk of mass atrocities, ethnically targeted violence, and sexual abuse remains extremely high. The Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator Tom Fletcher urged member states to stop fueling the war and to prioritize peace over political and commercial interests.
Stop arming this violence. Insist that stopping this conflict is more important than any narrow political or commercial interest. Those who want to leave El Fasher must be able to do so safely. Those who remain must be protected. There must be accountability for those carrying out the killing and the sexual violence, for those giving the orders, and those providing the weapons should consider their responsibilities. Humanitarians simply asking that we be allowed to do our jobs and save lives is not working.
Fletcher also condemned the expulsion of key United Nations officials from Sudan, calling it a direct attack on humanitarian efforts to reach millions in need.
So you must demand that we are able to operate everywhere, including by deploying our national and international staff into areas of greatest need. We ask you to use your muscle to create genuine pressure to ensure this. In this context, I am furious that the World Food Programme's country director and emergency coordinator have been expelled by the Sudanese authorities without explanation.
The UN Security Council has expressed grave concern over the escalating violence and urged both warring parties to protect civilians, resume peace talks, and allow unhindered access for humanitarian aid. With more than 14 million people displaced and part of the country in famine, the war in Sudan is now the world's worst humanitarian crisis. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebukhang Mabange.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
All right, let's get into our roundup rep. This is what we bring to you on Rise and Shine on Mondays, and we speak to our resident analyst, Mighty Jamie, talking about some of the stories highlighted earlier from last week over the weekend, as well as throwing forward to this new week ahead. A very good morning to you, Mighty. How are you?
I'm very well, and good morning to all the listeners and viewers.
I trust the weekend was good for you.
Very quiet. This is how I like it.
Yeah, we love it. The older we get, I'm telling you, that's just the way to go. So today, let's start with Tanzania. The president there, Samia Suluhu Hassan, has been re-elected with a staggering 97.6% of the vote. The Electoral Commission having announced this on Saturday. The result also was after 3 days of polls. They had closed, and that also comes after some controversies. The election was marked by low voter turnout. There was violent protests and the absence of major opposition candidates, amongst other issues there. What do you think this paints in terms of the picture when it comes to Tanzania's democracy?
Well, number one, I think that what is clear here is that there is no democracy in Tanzania right now. And this outcome of 98% in and of itself, to me, screams of election rigging. Even if I did not know the rest of the context, I would definitely be concerned about such a political outcome. But also, we've seen that opposition leaders were arrested. We've seen that there was intimidation. We've seen that there was shutting down of internet, social media. And I think up to now, the internet is shut down. It was only opened briefly to announce the result. And it looks as if, President Samia will basically have 3 terms, because she came in 2021, basically giving her 4 years. And now she's going into her first term. And I don't know if we should really say that it's a first term, considering that she already has been in power for this period of time. But definitely there has been democratic recession, or what do they call it? Backsliding is the formal term that they like to use in Tanzania right now. The African Union has congratulated her. I think that is a very troubling outcome, because they keep congratulating these African leaders who are winning these elections in undue conditions and in ways that don't benefit the people on the ground. I think it's just also a reminder that we must be careful to clap and not clap when we get a first something, first woman, first black person, first such and such, because sometimes those people are not meaningfully representative. When we were clapping hands for President Samia, nobody was assuming that she's going to be the first woman dictator in Africa. We were actually hoping for something much better, but she has turned out that she actually wants to outdo the men who are doing dictatorship on this continent, and she's going for first prize. And right now it looks as if she's actually outdoing them. Even Paul Kagame does not win elections with this kind of a percentage.
Yeah. Let's go to the US, or Nigeria rather. US President Donald Trump having said that he has asked the Defense Department to prepare for a possible fast military action in Nigeria if the country fails to address attacks on Christians. So in a post there on Truth Social on Saturday, Trump also announced that the US would immediately halt all aid and assistance to the country of Nigeria. What do you make of Trump's announcement on cutting US aid and possibly intervening militarily in Nigeria?
It was a bit of a curveball, because I wasn't expecting Trump to take such a hostile position on issues in Nigeria. One, because when he was doing the visa restrictions, I think we had a conversation on this platform around how Nigeria wasn't listed. And I thought it was very strange, because there's a large immigrant community in America from Nigeria. And also there's a large number in terms of percentage terms of visa regulation violations and overstays. So I thought, oh, okay, it means Nigeria is in his good books. But right now, it looks as though things have changed and that Trump has taken a different tone. Of course, there are issues in Nigeria with Boko Haram, with the Fulani headsmen. There are issues of insecurity there, and there are some tensions in some parts of the country. But I don't know if this particularly is the right way of dealing with those issues. But definitely something happened between Trump's bureaucratic team and the Nigerian leadership that actually caused this kind of a shift. We thought it was mostly going to be South Africa facing the Trump blaze this year in 2025, but it looks as if Nigeria is now on his naughty list. I mean, some people are talking about oil and an interest in oil. I'm not sure it's necessarily just about oil, because if it was, probably they would have, done something earlier. And also people are pushing to electric vehicles now in America. So I'm not sure exactly what happened here, but it does look as if something has irritated Donald Trump in terms of his relationship with the Nigerian leadership.
All right, to Morocco now, Mighty. The United Nations Security Council has voted to extend the mandate of its Western Sahara Mission, or MINURSO, for another year, while formally endorsing Morocco's 2007 autonomy plan as the sole basis for resolving the long-running conflict there. How do you assess the UN Security Council's decision to endorse Morocco's autonomy plan?
Well, it does look as if this autonomy plan is gaining a lot of traction. If you recall, France endorsed it, a few other African nations endorsed it. We also saw this year Jacob Zuma also going to Morocco or endorsing some relationship with the Moroccans. So it looks as if this plan is gaining traction. The Moroccan argument has always been that it has been one country for the longest period of time, even predating, their colonization period. They've always said that the Polisario Front is not necessarily something that has a universal mandate in the Western Sahara, and that they've given sufficient autonomy in the Western Sahara to those particular groups of people for them to be able to self-actualize. And it looks as if the global community is persuaded by that, and that this is what is gaining traction right now. Of course, countries like South Africa and some members of the African Union have not necessarily endorsed this plan, but it looks as if it's now going to gain more traction, and we'll have to really see if there's going to be any internal opposition. We have seen Morocco going through youth protests and a little bit of internal instability, but not necessarily related to issues of the Western Sahara. But with France backing this, with the UN Security Council backing this, I don't necessarily see how it's going to be reversed at this particular point.
Tunisian authorities on Friday, they ordered the suspension of Nawat, one of the country's leading independent investigative media outlets. This in a widening crackdown on free speech and civil society. It's a month suspension. What does this mean then for Tunisia's democracy and the political climate there?
I don't think we should be referring to Tunisia as a democracy at this point. I think it has also gone in the direction of democratic backsliding. If you really think about the arrest of activists, the arrest of journalists, and now the suspension of, investigative media outlets, this is not a democracy. We should call it a dictatorship at this point. It's definitely a setback, and hopefully we see other voices around the continent, especially media voices and practitioners, speaking up very vocally against this retrogressive move. But definitely, I wouldn't at this particular point call it a democracy.
Okay, we'll leave it there for today. Quite a lot of things that we had to cover, but we are unfortunately out of time. And we always appreciate your insights, Jamie. Have a great week ahead.
Thanks for having me, and thanks to everybody. Have a great week.
Thank you. That's our resident analyst, Mighty Jamie, giving us the Roundup Wrap. That's the segment that comes to you after the 6 a.m. news here on Rise and Shine on Mondays. Stay tuned. It's now 6:30, and we go to news headlines. Here's Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. The meeting of the Government of National Unity leaders in South Africa is expected to continue today in Krugersdorp in the Western Johannesburg. President Cyril Ramaphosa has summoned several party leaders in the GNU to the two-day meeting at a secret venue. This follows recent disagreements in the 10-party pact. U.S. President Donald Trump's threat of military action against Nigeria over what he says is extremist manslaughter of Christians has caused alarm in the Western African nation. Nigeria has denied allegations that Christians are being targeted more than any other group. And the Israeli military says it has received the remains of 3 more hostages from Hamas through the Red Cross in Gaza. Israel is seeking the remains of 11 more hostages under U.S. President Donald Trump's ceasefire deal. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Right, let's take a first look at what's been happening in the world of sport. And on a Monday, it's usually jam-packed because of the weekend. Let's find out as we say good morning to you, Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Peter. Very good morning from the sports desk. We'll start here. So the Confederation of African Football has confirmed the draw procedures for the group stages of the Total Energies CAF Champions League, as well as the CAF Confederation Cup for the 2025-2026 season. That ceremony will be taking place today in Johannesburg, right here in South Africa. Now, 16 clubs have advanced from the second preliminary round and will be engaged in the official group stage, where they will be divided into 4 groups of 4 teams. And then the teams that they are seeded best on their performance in CAF interclub competitions over the past 5 years. And that's how they'll be seeded when it comes to this draw later on today. So let's remind you of those teams. So 16 teams in the CAF Champions League, including former champions and record champions Al Ali, Al Hilal, Esperance, AFR Rabat. There's also JS Kabile, Mamelodi Sundowns, MC Algiers, Petro de Luanda, Power Dynamos, Pyramids FC, Rivers United, RS Bakan, Simba FC, Stade Milan, Saint Elulu Popo, as well as Young Africans. In the CAF Confederation Cup, the teams are as follows: Zamalek, Wydad Casablanca, USM Algiers, CR Belouizdad, Stellenbosch FC, Al Masri, AS Manema Union, Joliba AC da Bamako, Kaizer Chiefs, AS Otono, San Pedro, Nairobi United, Olympic Club de Safim, Azam FC, Singida Black Stars, as well as Zesco United. On to some cricket news now. A heroic century from Proteas woman captain Laura Wolfart was not enough to save her team as they fell to a 52-run defeat against India in the final of the 50-over World Cup at the Dr. D.Y. Patil Sports Academy in Navi Mumbai on Sunday. So Wolfart cracked 11 fours as well as 6 in a sublime 104 of 98 balls, her second straight century after her player of the match 169 in their semi-final win over England last week, but it was unfortunately not to be for the South African side, as Laura Wolfart did not receive much support from the rest of the batting order. Now, youngster Annelie Dirksen, 35 of 37 balls, was the next best batter for South Africa, showing just how little support Wolfart received from the rest of the order, in particular the senior players who came up short. For India, it was a star all-round performance from Shafili Verma as well as Deepti Sharma that secured them a famous win in front of their home fans. Verma top scored for her team with 87 of 78 balls at the top of the order, while Sharma struck a run, a ball 58 down the back end to get them to a solid 298 for the loss of 7 wickets after they were forced to bat first by South Africa, who won the toss earlier on in the day. On to some tennis news now. Yannick Sinner beat Felix Auger-Aliassime to win his first Paris Masters title and reclaim the world #1 ranking from rival Carlos Alcaraz. Now, Sinner's 6-4, 7-6 victory over the Canadian extended his winning streak in indoor hard courts to 26 matches, a run that stretches back to the 2023 Davis Cup finals. Now, the win also lifted the 24-year-old Italian 250 points above Alcaraz in the rankings before the season-ending ATP finals begin on the 9th of November. Now, Sinner's victory also ensures a race to the year-end world #1 ranking will go down to the final tournament of the season, a fitting end to a year where his rivalry with Alcaraz has reached great heights. Now, the pair also have won the past 8 Grand Slam tournaments between them and remain on a very different level to the rest of the men's tour. This is what Sinner had to say after winning his maiden Masters title.
Yeah, it was a very high quality match. He was serving incredibly well when I had a couple of break chances in the second set, but has been an amazing run. Vienna and here, super happy, and of course now we are looking forward to Turin, but I also want to enjoy this moment. It's a very special day.
Meanwhile, Aryna Sabalenka celebrated securing the year-end world /1 ranking with a crushing victory over Yasmin Paolini at the WTA finals. US Open champion Sabalenka was impressive on serve in a 6-3, 6-1 win over the fatigued Italian in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. Now, victory over the world #8 was Paolini's 60th win of the year and her 12th over a top 10 opponent. Belarusian Sabalenka has now spent 63 weeks in total at the top of the world rankings, including 55 in a row since October of last year. So that concludes your sports news this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, our email address is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Alternatively, call us on +27 11714 4459. I'm back with more sports news in the next hour. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
manje Vito i Jabulani Nkolele i Magoda. Jabulani is a young man from Giyani in Limpopo in South Africa. Very easy guy, taking things easy. To know me is to know that I love what I do, which I'm crazy about it. So when you hear me on radio, expect the best. Expect great music. Expect great content. Expect 180 minutes of nothing but fun. You'll find me on the morning reset, 3 to 6 a.m., Monday to Friday. Siyabangena baba. Ay. Mbulekeni.
Right, let's find out what's happening in the world of business. We get our first update on this Monday with Chandugo Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa and ministers from the economic cluster will answer questions in Parliament this week. Parliament will also continue with its two inquiries this week. The ad hoc committee looking into issues of national security, while the Standing Committee on Public Accounts is investigating maladministration at the Road Accident Fund. Deputy Minister of Police Polibu Shielo will be the witness before the ad hoc committee on Tuesday. In other news, the Western Cape government in South Africa has been hosting the 12th Regional Leaders Summit at the Cape Town International Convention Centre under the theme Growth Through Economic Resilience. The biannual multilateral gathering of delegates of 6 international partner regions will continue until Friday. Premier Alan Winde.
7 regions, and this is our own province, the Western Cape. There's Bavaria from Germany, Georgia from the United States, Quebec from Canada, Sao Paulo from Brazil, Shandong from China, and Upper Austria from Austria. And we will focus on various areas of cooperation, like investment cooperation, trade collaboration, infrastructure development, technology and innovation, economic opportunity and workforce development, cultural capital, and sporting excellence.
In other news, the Bank of England looks likely to keep interest rates on hold this coming Thursday, slowing its pace of cuts for the first time since it started to loosen policy last year, although some analysts do now expect a reduction after softer inflation and wage data. The bank's most recent rate cut by 0.25% in August only passed by a 5-4 margin after 2 rounds of voting by the Monetary Policy Committee. British consumer price inflation remains the highest among major advanced economies at 3.8%, due largely to one-off factors including April's rise in employer social security charges. China's factory activity in October expanded at a slower pace as new orders and output both waned amid tariff anxiety. The rating dog China General Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index (PMI), compiled by S&P Global, dropped to 50.6 in October from 51.2 in September. The 50 mark separates growth from contraction. Founder of rating dog Yao Yu says among the sub-indices, only employment showed a positive month-on-month change, while all other indicators declined to varying degree. The survey was taken when U.S. President Donald Trump had threatened to impose 100% tariffs on Chinese goods. And flight delays have affected airports across the U.S. as the government shutdown continues into a second month. There are disruptions for travelers in New York, Texas, and Chicago. More than 10,000 air traffic controllers have been working without pay throughout the shutdown, but some are calling in sick. U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy.
We're already stressed in that we don't have enough controllers in our system. And this shutdown, when we have staffing triggers where they're not coming in because they're funding their families and food on their tables, that makes it more difficult because we're already short. They're making decisions to feed their families. I'm not going to fire our traffic controllers. I have loved them and supported them as they're trying to go through this process, and it's challenging for them. They need support. They need money. They need a paycheck.
Now let's shift our focus to financial indicators this morning. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 436 Naira, Botswana 13 Pula 70, Kenya, the dollar is 128 shilling 20, Zambia 22 kwacha 8. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 38, in Russia 79 rubles 55, India 80 rupee 80, China 71.12, South Africa 17 rand 31 cents. $1 is 76 pence to the British pound and 87 to the euro. Taking a look at commodities, gold is at $3,999, platinum at $1,588 per ounce, the price of Brent crude oil at $65.09 a barrel. That is all for now. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chandruko Ligegi.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa.
It's time for your G20 fact of the morning. Did you know that the African Union and African countries laid the groundwork through regional strategies and initiatives to promote economic growth and investment in the African continent, such as the AU's Agenda 2063, the Addis tax initiatives, as well as the Programme for Infrastructure Development in Africa, or PIDA. Now, this is as South Africa becomes the first African country to host the G20 summit. And that is our G20 fact for the morning.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability. Your life, your rhythm, your Africa. Channel Africa. Find it for free on Google Play and the Apple App Store. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
6:45 Central African Time it is. Now, the National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa, or NUMSA, says talks with the Automotive Manufacturers Employers Organization have stalled after rejecting a proposed wage increase of 6.5% for the first year and 5% for the following 2 years. NUMSA is demanding a 9% increase for the first year and 8% the next two. SABC News economics reporter Katleho Lekhodi reports.
The National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa has been bleeding members in various sectors and says the Section 189 process to retrench has been abused. The union has taken issue with developments at major companies such as Aspen Pharmacare, ArcelorMittal and at Ford SA. General Secretary Evan Jim says they'll approach the Labour Court.
They must not retrench any single worker, and that fixed-term contracts must be made to be permanent, and we will be filing that application today so that we can challenge the current retrenchment, because it has no basis from where we are sitting. In AMSA, we already won in court. We are defending the victory of a court. Clearly, AMSA CEO Gobas does not respect the rule of law. He's been told by the court, Gobas, that he must reinstate those workers. He must go to a consultation, meaningful consultation with the union.
The union has threatened to strike in the automotive sector over a stalemate with 7 original equipment manufacturers represented by the Automobile Manufacturers Employers Organization. NUMSA started the negotiations at 9%, with the latest offer from the employer sitting at 7% for the first year and 5.5% for the following 2 years. Consumer inflation is currently sitting at just over 3%. Jim says this is rejected. The union has now obtained a certificate to strike.
What we're rejecting from employers is 7%, 5.5, 5.5. We're happy with 7% in the first year. We can live with that. But we do not agree that workers must be given 5.5, 5.5. Employers must bring that 0.5%, and we can have 7, 6, 6. We can close these negotiations with the current package that we've been able to negotiate. That's the bone of contention that we are fighting about. And it's irresponsible for employers to plunge the industry to a strike for a 1% over a period of a 3 year. This money they can pay to workers and then manage their production. They will recover this 1% over a period of a 3 year.
The original equipment manufacturers, including Toyota, VW SA, BMW SA, and Mercedes-Benz, which are represented by the Automobile Manufacturers Employers Organization, employ more than 30,000 workers. NUMSA has challenged the companies to disclose their financials for transparency.
All the 7 OEMs must disclose how much money they have generated out of government incentive in the form of automotive investment scheme and the other incentives such as volume assembled location allowance, VALA. That's the first declaration we said, a disclosure they must make. We also said that the auto industry must also disclose how much money it has made out of generated credit certificate, which are used to offset duties and bring cars that are not locally assembled but are sold in the same local market.
The union also wants National Treasury to intervene, accusing some companies in the private security sector of defrauding workers by deducting money for medical insurance and pension fund, but failing to pay these amounts over to the respective service providers. NUMSA says it is looking to action the strike certificate in the auto sector if the employer remains stagnant on the 5.5% offers in the second and third year. The union will also be looking to the courts for a favorable outcome in their retrenchments litigation. I'm Katla Kologodi for SABC News in Johannesburg.
Channel Africa.
Your Africa, your voice, your channel. Channel Africa.
The African perspective.
The African perspective, indeed. Let's take a look at the story now. South Africa's Deputy President Paul Mashatile has reaffirmed the government's commitment to strengthening transformative legislation, including broad-based black economic empowerment, otherwise known as Triple BEE. This to better support disadvantaged and young South Africans. Speaking at the inaugural Youth Investment Indaba, which took place in Johannesburg, Deputy President Mashatile said that the government will maintain its focus on transformation policies whilst at the same time improving and reinforcing them to broaden economic inclusion. Channel Africa's Michael Mbewe has more.
Hosted by the National Youth Development Agency under the theme The Road to National Youth Fund, the investment Indaba convened leaders from government, the private sector, development institutions, and youth-led enterprises to drive youth-focused investment and inclusive economic growth, focusing on fostering dialogue, innovation, and collaboration to break down barriers that limit young people's full participation in South Africa's economy. Speaking to the media, Mashatile said the Triple BEE legislation is meant to transform the lives of the disadvantaged, including the youth, and it's here to stay.
The government has started looking at most of this transformative legislation, including Triple BEE, with the intention to reinforce them, make them work better. So where there are challenges, we'll deal with them. The point I was making is that we can't drop transformative legislation. If there are challenges, we fix. Triple BEE is a very important transformative legislation to empower the previously disadvantaged people, and therefore it will be kept. It will be improved to make sure that we empower more and more people, including the young people who are here today.
Over $5 billion has been set aside for the Transformation Fund initiative. However, questions have been lingering in the court of public opinion on the availability of the funds. In response, Mashatile affirmed that the plan has already been set in motion and being championed by South Africa's Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Pakstau.
Yes, the Transformation Fund has already been launched. It's led by Minister Pakstau, DTIC. So the point I was making is that the NYDA must also engage the Minister and the DIC to be able to benefit from that Transformation Fund, to be able to capitalize their own youth fund that they have launched, which they have now started the campaign to bring all DFIs, private sector, everybody. We support that.
For the youth, access to funding is a nightmare with so many bureaucracies and red tapes along the way. Mashatile assured the youth that government is working on the matter.
Indeed, that is what we are currently doing to make it easier for young people to access funds, dealing with all these regulatory burdens to ensure that there is ease of access to utilizing these resources. Young people have complained before about access, and we are going to make sure that indeed they are able to access these funds, because funds are there. Young people have ideas, and we must make sure they can access these funds.
He also urged young people to seize opportunities in the digital economy.
Well, we are in a digital economy already. That's why I was making the point to the young people here that they must be in that space. Technology is advancing. They must not be left behind. And the NYDA is going to make sure that they mobilize young people to be able to be involved in that sector as well. They come with innovative solutions and so on, so that they can then access funding in that area of the digital space. It's very important as we are in the digital economy.
NYDA's Executive Deputy Chairperson Bonga Makhanya outlined his ambitious plan of creating thousands of jobs through this initiative to Mashatile.
DP, we want to create over 20,000 direct jobs using this fund and over 100,000 indirect jobs. This will help build sustainability for the agency, but most importantly, we want to see a new layer of businesses in South Africa that are as a result of the NYDA. We want to see a new Seriti. We want to see young black companies that are thriving, that are big, that are playing in strategic sectors, and we believe that through the NYDA, through the DFI's representatives today, the DBSA, the IGC, the PIC, we can realize this is a reality.
Some of the youth are optimistic that the project this time will be beneficial to meet their entrepreneurial aspirations. Here is Nkosinati Mboniso from a company known as K2 Africa.
We're hoping that the government empowers us as the youth and makes opportunities available to us, because there's a lot of red tape in terms of procurement in government space, and not many opportunities are being provided to the youth, because we are very passionate, and sometimes policies take long to be passed and there's delays in the budget. So we're hoping that things are being fast-tracked, that we manage to empower ourselves as the youth.
Michael Mbewe, Channel Africa News, Johannesburg.
Ahoy, matey!
Captain here to help, right, boys?
Set sail with us on a digital voyage like no other. Channel Africa has a treasure trove of awesomeness. That is our website and social media pages.
Tell me, why are you here?
We want you to be part of our adventure.
The winds are changing, Captain. And this time...
Imagine a world where curiosity knows no bounds, where entertainment meets enlightenment, and where every click leads to the African perspective. Visit us on our website, www.channelafrica.co.za, or follow us on Instagram or on X at Channel Africa 1. Go on, like us on Facebook at Channel Africa 1. So, spread the word. Tell a friend that Channel Africa's online variety is what they need on the web. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Tune in and turn up the volume. This is Channel Africa.
Mozambique's President Daniel Chapo has indicated that his government may challenge the revised budget and timeline submitted by French energy giant Total Energies for its liquefied natural gas or LNG project in the country. The company recently informed President Chapo that the Mozambique LNG consortium now expects project costs to have risen by $4.5 billion following a 4-year suspension triggered by an Islamist militant attack in 2021. Channel Africa's economics reporter Innocent Samosa has more.
Total Energies and its partners want the development and production period extended by 10 years as partial compensation. looking at cost implications. But how might the proposed 4.5 billion US dollars increase in project costs affect Mozambique's projected revenues and broader economic benefits from the LNG project? Dr. Wilker Diaz shares his perspective.
So that proposal to increase the project costs is not a very good signal for Mozambique because that means less tax revenues, less profits for our state, and maybe the government need to change the projects, the priority projects for the next times. And right now, it's possible to say we don't have enough money to give the tax revenues what we agree in the past.
On contract extension, from an economic and policy standpoint, Dr. Diaz shares some of the potential risks and benefits for Mozambique if it agrees to Total Energy's request to extend the development and production period by 10 years.
About the contract extension, I think Mozambique will be more dependent of the gas project, the gas tax revenues, the profits from the gas, and that is not great, or that's not good for one economy. We need to development be dependent only on one sector. And I think in other part we have some benefits on that, because if the government play one good game on that time, maybe he'll be one. It will be a tactic we can use from one tactic to try to attract more international investments to our country.
He adds that the upside of 10 years extension might help rebuild investor confidence.
Because if we extend the years, maybe we can show Mozambique state it's one state who the international investor we can trust on that country. So that is the reason sometimes it's a good thing when we have something type of the.
Given the government's indication of possible counter-arguments, he believes Mozambique lacks strong negotiating leverage against Total Energies to effectively safeguard national interest, such as job creation, local content, and revenue sharing.
I think right now, at this moment, Mozambique don't have a very big power to negotiate it, the contract of the LNG process for now. Because we have so many reasons. We have the terrorism attack, we have the social problems affect our economy. So maybe the Total have more power to negotiate it than the government. But Mozambique have a very big team or diplomatic team. But I think will depend also to the political will. So that is the other very good thing, because sometimes the interestings of the political party in power.
As discussions between the Mozambican government and Total Energies continue, the outcome will be closely watched for its impact on the country's energy, ambitions, and economic future. For Channel Africa News, I'm Innocent Samos in Johannesburg.
It's 7 o'clock Central African time, which means it's time for the second hour of Rise and Shine on this Monday morning. Broadcasting live from our studios in Johannesburg, South Africa. I'm Peter Ndoro.
My name is Asanda Beda. In this hour, we look at Nigeria, Africa's most populous country, having been grappling with multifaceted security challenges over the past 15 years. And we go to the Transnational Organized Crime, or the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime, GITOC, having issued a new report. They're warning that drone warfare in Ukraine could inspire criminal groups around the world. Those stories and more coming up. Let's get our news first. Here's Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. The meeting of a government of national unity leaders in South Africa is expected to continue today in Krugersdorp in the western Johannesburg. President Cyril Ramaphosa has summoned several party leaders in the GNU to the two-day meeting at a secret venue. This follows recent disagreements in the 10-party pact. Last week, Deputy President Paul Mashatile led the parties in signing the newly adopted term of reference for the GNU. The PAC is among the parties whose leaders are attending the meeting. Spokesperson Apa Bowe.
We expect that the recently approved terms of reference for the clearinghouse, which essentially deals with disputes within the government, how we are going to handle such. We've recently seen in the past that we would have parties going out accusing each other or attacking government and all of that. Now we have developed a mechanism on how to deal with such issues. So what is expected to be discussed at this party political leaders meeting of the GNU, amongst others, would be the terms of reference.
U.S. President Donald Trump's threat of military action against Nigeria over what he says is extremist mass manslaughter of Christians has caused alarm in the West African nation. Nigeria has a Muslim majority north and a Christian majority south. It has denied allegations that Christians are being targeted more than any other group. Nigeria has tried to play down Trump's threat but says the U.S. must respect its sovereignty. Daniel Bala is Nigeria's presidential advisor.
If it is a joint action with the Nigerian government, then that's fine, because Nigeria is a territorial country, right? It's a sovereign country. And I don't think diplomatically it would be right to invade a country without collaboration with that country, especially if that country is your partner in the fight against insurgency. Where you see that kind of intervention is where there is an intelligence assessment that that country is in fact the one fueling the crisis for which the Americans want to intervene. This is not the case with Nigeria.
Trump told reporters on Air Force One that he would not allow the large number of deaths to continue.
They're killing record numbers of Christians in Nigeria. And they have other countries very bad also. You know that part of the world, very bad. They're killing the Christians and killing them in very large numbers. We're not going to allow that to happen.
The death toll from a landslide in western Kenya's Rift Valley has now risen to 26 following heavy rains on Saturday. 25 people are said to be missing. The government has deployed military planes and disaster response specialists to conduct a search and rescue operation. Hundreds of people have been killed in recent years in landslides and flooding in Kenya, with scientists saying climate change is causing more intense and frequent extreme weather events. Lastly, the Israeli military says it has received the remains of 3 more hostages from Hamas through the Red Cross in Gaza. Their bodies will now be transferred to a forensic center for identification. Israel is seeking the remains of 11 more hostages under U.S. President Donald Trump's ceasefire deal. It has accused Hamas of being too slow in delivering them. The BBC's Sebastian Asher.
If the issue of the dead hostages is resolved by the return of all of them within the coming weeks, that will go a long way towards paving the path towards the second stage of a ceasefire, which is when it becomes existential for Hamas, when the very existence of Hamas, the demands for it to disarm, the demands for it to play no further role in governance in Gaza become paramount. That's why I think there are these strong feelings, not just in Israel, but outside.
Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Tsinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, so India crowned women's ODI world champions this after beating South Africa by 52 runs, while Bournemouth were beaten 3-1 by Manchester City. Details of these and other stories coming up at 7:30.
Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time.
Negotiations aimed at restoring peace in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo have dragged on for months in the Qatari capital Doha. It stalled due to disagreements between the Congolese government and the M23 rebels over key demands to end the conflict. The deadlock has triggered renewed fighting in North and South Kivu, worsening the already dire humanitarian crisis. Chris Ochamringa has more from Kinshasa.
Delegates from the Congolese government and the M23 rebel group are holding talks in Qatar aimed at ending years of conflict in eastern DRC. But even as negotiations continue, fighting has flared up again, violating a ceasefire and threatening to derail the peace process. Each side blames the other for renewed attacks and has vowed to retaliate. Many Congolese citizens say they want peace, but not at any price.
We want peace and support the efforts of our president, but our country should not accept the rebels to be integrated into our institutions and army after a deal is reached.
The DRC government and the M23 rebels were expected to sign a peace agreement on August 18th, but talks collapsed over disputes on rebel withdrawal from captured territories and the release of prisoners. Kinshasa is also demanding that Rwanda withdraw its troops from eastern DRC, but Kigali insists it will only do so after the FDLR militia, composed of Hutus linked to the 1994 Rwandan genocide, are disarmed. The standoff has led some citizens to call for a national dialogue.
We are asking our president to convene a meeting in our country with all the stakeholders in that conflict in eastern DRC to discuss how to resolve it, because the situation is really bad.
Delegates from 50 countries and international organizations recently met in France to support efforts aimed at restoring peace in the east of the DRC. French President Emmanuel Macron announced plans to reopen Goma's international airport within weeks to allow humanitarian flights. The airport was closed in January after the M23 rebels captured the city from government soldiers backed by troops from the Southern African Development Community. 19 soldiers from South Africa, Malawi, and Tanzania were killed in that offensive. The M23 rebels have rejected France's decision to reopen the airport and suggested that the matter be discussed at the talks in Qatar. Millions of people displaced by the long-running conflict in the east of the DRC are yearning for peace, but the government and the M23 rebels have not yet agreed on the conditions that they have put forward to end the fighting. Mutual mistrust and suspicions between them have made the talks drag on and sparked renewed hostilities. Chris Ochamringa, SABC News, Kinshasa.
This is
Channel Africa.
Nigeria, which is Africa's most populous country, has been grappling with multifaceted security challenges for over 15 years now. Islamist insurgents such as Boko Haram and the Islamic State West Africa province ISWAP continue to wreak havoc, particularly in the northeast of the country, whilst local conflicts between herders and farmers and kidnapping for ransom have spread insecurity to other parts of the country. Recently, tensions escalated after US President Donald Trump threatened military action over reported attacks on Christians, raising questions about the role of foreign involvement in Nigeria's security landscape. Well, to help us navigate these complex issues, we now speak to Jay Gaskia, who's a Nigeria-based political and security analyst, for some insights on the current situation, the effectiveness of Nigeria's security response, and what foreign involvement would mean for the country and the region. Jay, thanks very much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me. Good morning.
So, Jay, to start us off, how would you summarize Nigeria's security situation right now, especially in the northeast, but also in the central and northwest regions where new patterns of violence seem to be emerging?
I think that it's safe to say that Nigeria is actually facing, and has been facing for a while, complex insecurity challenges of a variety of types of insecurity in the country. But it's also important to state very clearly that these challenges have been there for quite a while now, and then we've witnessed instances when we have had when it seems like these challenges are being overcome, and then we've had instances when there seem to be resurgence and flare-ups in these, and this cannot be. So we have a situation where essentially across the country, the state of insecurity is such that the military, Nigeria's military, is deployed in internal security operations across the 6 geopolitical zone, and so that in itself is a measure of the scope and the nature and the scale of this challenge. But like you pointed out in your question, really, yes, we are seeing some new patterns that are emerging, but these new patterns have been able to fester, largely because of the unresolved historical grievances and unresolved patterns of conflict that have emerged over those unresolved grievances. So, for example, resource grievances between herders and farmers. For instance, resource grievances in the north of Nigeria, resource grievances between over resource control in the oil-rich Niger Delta, for instance, and so on and so forth. Inter and intra-communal conflicts in many parts of the country, a number of them occasioned by boundary disputes between communities, by challenges and disputes over farmland, over water resources, and so on and so on, and over political contestations and mobilizations. And so these new patterns, particularly the two primary ones, which we can say the Islamist insurgents, and then also the armed organized armed banditry, large-scale armed banditry. What they have done is to fester on these existing source, and then to ride on the back of this in terms of the mobilization grievances. That said, I think it's clear from this reading of the situation that the biggest challenge in Nigeria, therefore, has been one that is largely challenged with dysfunctional governance. This is also shown in the field sometimes by the lack of coordination among security agencies, sometimes, and sometimes by the competition for turf. So you have dysfunctional governance. You have historically also the inability to meet basic needs of the people, and so which allows grievances to emerge, which also then allows and because grievance resolution mechanisms are declining or are now ineffective or have been compromised by politicians and the political class, or a number of these factors, you have a situation where therefore the grievances fester, and because they fester, it is very easy where you then have very charismatic individuals to mobilize and organize these grievances, and particularly when there has been failure with respect to employment, job creation, and livelihoods sustainability.
I think you've answered what was going to be my second question, and that's been the security forces, the federal security forces response. And I think you've described it as misgovernance on a particular scale. So let me move on to this then. A major focal point has been, particularly recently, that Christians are being specifically targeted by jihadist and extremist groups in Nigeria. Do you think that this is accurate, and is religion a primary driver to some of the factors that are playing out?
But I think that religion and ethnicity, because both of them in Nigeria are more like Siamese twins. Religion and ethnicity are rather not primary factors. They often become secondary factors because of then either the faith or the ethnicity of the communities that are in conflict. They become secondary factors, but they are hardly on their own the basis for the grievance and the basis for mobilization. And so even with the jihadist insurgencies, Boko Haram, Larukawa, ISWAP, and the rest of them in the northeast and the northwest of the country, you find, and that's why it's been difficult even for these jihadist insurgencies to actually mobilize exclusively on the basis of religion, because Nigeria is also a country that is very much religiously and ethnically integrated. I mean, you go across this country, there are no parts of this country, there is no single village, town, community in this country that you can see is exclusively Christian, exclusively Muslim, or any part of this country that you can see is exclusively Christian, exclusively Muslim, or a workplace that you say there people are exclusively Christians or exclusively Muslims. And in many of the families, more than a third to probably 2/5 of families are actually families that where you also see these religions are being practiced by members of the family. So essentially, religion has not been a main driver of this contestation. And then when we now talk about the question of whether Christians are being deliberately targeted, so again, I would say this, that so when you have a conflict between nomads who are Fulani and who may be Fulani, who may be Kanuri, and then you have a situation where majority of them are Muslims, and then you have a community of farmers where majority of them are Christians. But in both groups, you still have the other faith. Very easily, a conflict over land, over the use of water, over a pathway, over farmland, can quickly assume the coloration of religion. So, having said that, it is also not true, not totally true to say that that Christians and Christians alone have been targeted, even by the insurgents, because by the Islamic insurgents propagate a variety of Islam that is very absolutist in its content, and so Muslims, any other citizen who does not accept those views are infidels, are considered infidels, regardless of whether they are Christians or Muslims, or whether they are Muslim clerics or not. I mean, as recently as 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, we've had attacks on Muslim places of worship in the north of the country, and where people have been, where worshippers and the clerics have been killed and abducted, and we've had some of the abductions associated with this insecurity, yes. Particularly by the bandits. It's also one that is is not specific in terms of which targets, because it's really for ransom.
Jay, sadly, we're going to have to leave it there. We've run out of time, but thank you so much indeed for your insights on the security situation in Nigeria at this time. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So that was Jay Gaskia, a Nigerian-based political and security analyst, giving us his take on some of the developments that are taking place on the security front there. And Donald Trump has thrown his hat in the ring there, punishing Nigeria seemingly for the record number of attacks against Christians, as he's described it. But we heard there from Jay that it isn't Christians in particular that are being targeted by extremists.
With gratitude for the voices, the rhythm, and the dreams that unite us all.
Roho ya Afrika inaishi katika kila hadithi tunayosimulia.
Each new day is a gift, a reminder to pause, to breathe, and to give thanks for the laughter we share and the journeys we take and the stories that shape who we are.
Cada nascer do sol, lembre que há algo pelo qual ser grato.
La vie est un voyage, parcourons-la avec gratitude.
Channel Africa, celebrate the beauty of life with gratitude for the voices, the rhythms, and dreams that unite us all. This is Africa with Channel Africa, the African perspective. From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam, rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
So could we see a similar situation with the US's Donald Trump that happened here in South Africa, where he was accusing the country of genocide against Afrikaners? Now he's possibly about to threaten military action in Nigeria for something that he also doesn't have full information on.
So I think sometimes we forget actually what his true motivation is. His voter base is right-wing America, and right-wing America sit on the idea that they're conservative Christians. That's all he's doing. He's playing to his own audience at home. Whether he does anything about it is irrelevant. What he says and what they hear him saying is what's important, and that's what this is all about.
Yeah. Well, we come to South Africa. African Union, the former African Union chairperson, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. She has called for greater African unity and self-reliance, urging governments, religious institutions, and citizens to embrace a shared continental identity. Speaking at the third Kairos public lecture at UNISA in Pretoria, Dr. Dlamini Zuma said South Africans must stop seeing fellow Africans as foreigners and instead collaborate to boost intra-African trade, skills development, and inclusive growth. She added that Africa should no longer be a victim of exploitation, but act as a moral conscience for the world. Channel Africa's reporter Michael Mbewe reports.
Jointly hosted by UNISA and the Fortloza Foundation, the third Kairos public lecture represented a critical intellectual and moral engagement with the continuing relevance of the Kairos tradition in contemporary socio-political and theological discourse. It emerged from the prophetic witness of the 40th anniversary of the 1985 Kairos document, which called on the Church to discern and confront systemic injustice, and also reclaims Kairos as a hermeneutical lens through which the present crises of humanity may be interpreted. In her address, former AU chairperson Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma emphasized the urgent need for Africa unity, self-reliance, and a shared prosperity and continental identity through the Church.
The continent has fully embraced South Africa. Remember, it had isolated it, boycotted it. Now it has fully embraced South Africa, and South Africa is fully integrated in the continent. And this moment requires unity of the continent. How can both government and the church advocate for this unity of the continent? And also, Africa is involved in intra-Africa trade, skills revolution. The church used to be very good in skills once upon a time, education and all that. And if we promote intra-Africa trade and a skills revolution, this will contribute towards eradication of poverty and inequality.
Dr. Dlamini Zuma urged Africans to embrace a shared continental identity, reminding South Africans that they are part of a larger African family. She said the Church can help foster this unity, stressing that Africa's 1.4 billion people represent a vast common market and shared destiny.
So how can the Church contribute to us realizing that we are Africans? We're not South Africans. We're Africans who live in South Africa. There is a difference. We're first Africans. We happen to live in South Africa. And some people don't believe that. And as Africans, we are 1.4 billion plus. Can you imagine if you were a businessman or woman with a market of 1.4? But if you think you're South African, it's only 60 million. So we're Africans who live in South Africa. And all Africans must recognize that there are Africans living in Nigeria, Africans living in Kenya, but Africans. And also, our fortunes as Africans are intertwined. There can be no island of prosperity in the sea of poverty. We must all prosper.
Bodley Dlamini Zuma also challenged South Africans to rethink how they view fellow Africans, noting that most tourists to the country come from within the continent. She said Africans should never see each other as foreigners, urging the continent to move from dependency to dignity to become a moral conscious of the world, rich in its own resources and capable of giving rather than begging.
But I also want to remind us as South Africans that in 2024, 76% of tourists that arrived on our shores came from the continent of Africa. But what do you call them? Foreigners. How can they be foreigners here? And then we call others tourists. We call Africans foreigners. That's wrong. Africa must no longer be a victim of extraction and exploitation. Africa must become a moral conscience of the world, a continent that heals rather than bleeds, that gives rather than begs. Why should we be beggars? There's no power in a begging hand. And we don't need to beg, really, as a continent. We have everything that everyone needs, if only we were to take charge.
In a message of support, UAE Ambassador to South Africa, Mahash Saeed Al-Hamel, praised South Africa's leadership role in the continent, citing its strength in infrastructure, education, and aviation. He urged the country to continue investing in its youth and innovation sectors, noting that over 124,000 South Africans are contributing across various fields, including artificial intelligence in the UAE.
We believe that in South Africa is leading Africa, no doubt. Infrastructure, educations, aviations, and so on. So I will be so careful when I give credit to South Africa, but South Africa is leading Africa. If South Africa focus more now on the youth, both male and female, and building up their airspace, including the airlines, the education. And also I want to mention something, maybe it's here before. We have 124,000 South African women and men, which is also serving not as a labor, but in every sector of countries, including AI.
Michael Mbewe, Channel Africa News, Johannesburg.
And that takes us to 7:30, and to catch us up on what's making headlines in the news is Onele Nsinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. The meeting of Government of National Unity leaders in South Africa is expected to continue today in Western Johannesburg. President Cyril Ramaphosa has summoned several party leaders in the GNU to the two-day meeting at a secret venue. This follows recent disagreements in the 10-party pact. U.S. President Donald Trump said the U.S. military could deploy troops to Nigeria or carry out airstrikes to stop what he called the killing of a large number of Christians in the West African country. And British police say a 32-year-old man is now being treated as the only suspect after a mass stabbing on a train in England on Saturday. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nsinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Now let's check in with what's happening in the world of sports. We say good morning again to Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Asanda. Very good morning from the sports desk. So a heroic century from the Proteas women's captain Laura Volfard was not enough to save her team as they fell to a 52-run defeat against India in the final of the 50-over World Cup at the Dr. D.Y. Patil Sports Academy in Navi in Mumbai yesterday. So Volfard cracked 11 fours and a 6 in a sublime 106 of 98 balls, her second straight century after her play of the match 160 69 in their semi-final win over England, but she unfortunately didn't receive enough support from the rest of the batting order. Youngster Annery Dirksen, 35 of 37 balls, was the next best batter, showing her little support that Wolford received from the rest of the order, in particular the senior players who came up short. For India, it was an all-star round performances from Shafili Verma as well as Deepti Sharma, but secured them a famous win in front of their home fans in Mumbai last night. So Verma top scored with her team with 87 of 78 balls at the top of the order, while Sharma struck a run, a ball 58 down the back end to get them to a solid 298 for 7 after batting first in that final. India winning their first ever ODI Women's World Cup title. On to football news now. Erling Haaland scored twice to help move Manchester City up to second position in the Premier League standings with a 3-1 victory over Bournemouth. Now, Haaland's astonishing scoring record is showing no sign of slowing down, with his first 2 half strikes either side of Taylor Adams' equaliser, and then followed up by Nico O'Reilly's third, taking his tally now to 13 in 10 games this season and just 2 away from 100 league goals. Now, the goal-scoring machine celebrated his first strike with a robot celebration, but was denied the chance for a hat-trick when he was substituted in the final 10 minutes of that encounter, with his Manchester City total now standing at 141 goals in 159 appearances. On the continent now, the Confederation of African Football CAF has confirmed the draw procedures for the group stages of the Total Energies CAF Champions League as well as the CAF Confederation Cup 2025-2026 season, with a ceremony set now to take place later on today in Johannesburg in South Africa. Now, 16 clubs have advanced from the second preliminary round and will be engaged in the official group stage draw, where they will be divided into 4 groups of 4. The teams that have been seeded are based on their performances in the CAF Interclub competitions over the past 5 years. In tennis news now, Yannick Sinner beat Felix Auger-Aliassime to win his first ever Paris Masters title and reclaim the world #1 ranking from rival Carlos Alcaraz. Now, Sinner's 6-4, 7-6 victory over the Canadian extended his winning streak on indoor hard courts to 26 matches, a run that stretches back to the 2023 Davis Cup finals. Now, the win lifted the 24-year-old Italian 250 points above Alcaraz in the rankings before the season-ending ATP finals begin on the 9th of November. Now, Sinner's victory ensures that the race to the year-end world #1 ranking will go to the final tournament of the season, a fitting end to a year where this rivalry between the two players has reached great heights. Now, the pair has won the past 8 Grand Slam tournaments between them and remain on a different level to the rest of the men's tour. This is what Sinner had to say after winning his maiden Paris Masters title.
Yeah, it was a very high quality match. He was serving incredibly well when I had a couple of break chances in the second set, but has been an amazing run. Vienna and here, super happy, and of course now we are looking forward to Turin, but I also want to enjoy this moment. It's a very special day.
Meanwhile, in the women's game, Aryna Sabalenka celebrated securing a year-end world #1 ranking with a crushing victory over Yasmin Paolini at the WTA finals. The US Open champion Sabalenka was impressive on serve in a 6-3, 6-1 victory over the fatigued Italian in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia on Sunday. So victory over the world #8 Paolini was Sabalenka's 60th win of the year and her 12th over a top 10 opponent. Belarusian Sabalenka has now spent 63 weeks in total at the top of the world rankings, including 55 in a row since October of last year. She was asked about what it feels like to end yet another year as the world #1. This is what she had to say.
Oh, that feels super special. Of course, I'm super happy and super proud of the work that have been done, and that things are working, and I'm getting better and better every day. And I just hope that we're gonna keep doing what we are doing, and hopefully we can stay there.
Right, so that concludes your sports news on the second hour of Africa Rise and Shine. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, our email address is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. I'm back with the final sports update on the show in the next hour. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Channel Africa is evolving, and so are you. Stay connected wherever you are with our brand new website and mobile app. Stream your favorite shows, catch up on African news, culture, and conversations, all at your fingertips.
Africa is just a tap away. Your world, your stories, now on the go.
Stay connected wherever you are.
Visit channelafrica.co.za or download the Channel Africa app today. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Right, let's catch you up with what's been happening in the world of business. And at the desk this morning, we say good morning to Chanduko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. The legal battle between the Socio-Economic Rights Institute, SERI, and South Africa's city of Johannesburg is set to continue in the High Court today. The matter relates to the removal of unregistered informal traders from parts of the city centre. The parties met at the court on Friday but failed to reach an agreement, resulting in the matter being postponed. The city started removing informal traders who it says are operating illegally and in areas not designated for trading. However, traders have accused the city of violating their rights to earn a decent living. Johannesburg Mayor Dada Morero says Home Affairs needs to verify informal traders before they can be allocated new operating spaces.
The city has a strong case, and we believe that the proposals that we presented to SERI, which the judge also requested that we submit to him, are likely to form part of the judgment because they are fair, they're genuine, and the intention is really, firstly, to ensure that we strengthen informal trading by ensuring that it's in the right places, in safe places, in designated areas, so that the city can give them the support through its programs.
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa and ministers from the economic cluster will answer questions in Parliament this week. Parliament will also continue with its two inquiries this week, the ad hoc committee looking into issues of national security, while the Standing Committee on Public Accounts is investigating maladministration at the Road Accident Fund. Deputy Minister of Police Polly Bushielo will be the witness before the ad hoc committee on Tuesday. The Western Cape government in South Africa has been hosting the 12th Regional Leaders Summit at the Cape Town International Convention Centre under the theme Growth Through Economic Resilience. The biannual multilateral gathering of delegates of 6 international partner regions will continue until Friday. Premier Alan Winde.
The multilateral forums are made up from the 7 regions, and this is our own province, the Western Cape. There's Bavaria from Germany, Georgia from the United States, Quebec from Canada, Sao Paulo from Brazil, Shandong from China, and Upper Austria from Austria. And we will focus on various areas of cooperation, like investment cooperation, trade collaboration, infrastructure development, technology and innovation, economic opportunity and workforce development, cultural capital, and sporting excellence.
News outside of the continent, flight delays have affected airports across the U.S. as the government shutdown continues into a second month. There are disruptions for travelers in New York, Texas, and Chicago. More than 10,000 air traffic controllers have been working without pay throughout the shutdown, but some are calling in sick. U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy.
We're already stressed in that we don't have enough controllers in our system. And this shutdown, when we have staffing triggers where they're not coming in because they're funding their families and food on their tables, that makes it more difficult because we're already short. they're making decisions to feed their families. I'm not going to fire our traffic controllers. I have loved them and supported them as they're trying to go through this process, and it's challenging for them. They need support, they need money, they need a paycheck.
The Bank of England looks likely to keep interest rates on hold this coming Thursday, slowing its pace of cuts for the first time since it started to loosen policy last year, although some analysts do now expect a reduction after softer inflation and wage data. The bank's most recent rate cut by a 0.25% in August only passed by a 5-4 margin after 2 rounds of voting by the Monetary Policy Committee. British consumer price inflation remains the highest among major advanced economies at 3.8%, due largely to one-off factors, including April's rise in employer social security charges. Now, let's have a look at financial indicators. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,436 naira. In Botswana, 13 pula 70. Kenya, the dollar is at 128 shilling. 20 Zambia, 22 kwacha 8. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 38. In Russia, 79 rubles 55. India, 80 rupee 80. China, 71.12. South Africa, $1 is at 17 rand 31 cents. $1 is 76 pence to the British pound, 87 to the euro. Commodities, gold is at $3,999. Platinum at $1,588 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil at $65.09 a barrel. That's all for now. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chanduko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Where Africa's voices rise with stories that matter, we lead the conversation.
Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
On Rise and Shine now, we take a look at this story. The Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime, or GITOC, has issued a new report warning that drone warfare in Ukraine could inspire criminal groups around the world. The report highlights how drones already used in smuggling and surveillance could be adapted for air, land and sea operations, potentially even carrying weapons. Joining us to discuss the findings and implications is Paddy Jin, or CBE, Senior Expert at the GITOC. Paddy, thank you for joining us. A good morning to you.
Hello, good morning, and thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. The report calls the conflict in Ukraine a game changer for criminal use of drones. Can you explain that?
Yes, I'd be delighted to. Very simply, we've been seeing in Ukraine is a sea change in innovation of drone use. And world commentary normally sort of focuses on the bleed out of this innovation into other military uses, and especially into terrorism and militia use around the world. So, for example, the use of drones by the RSF in Sudan is a good example at the moment. Their use of drone capability against civilians, for example. Our report focuses on how this capability, this technology, is being watched and mimicked and taken on board by organized crime around the world. Now, this is not new. Organized crime has used drones for many years. The Mexican cartels had started weaponizing drones as far back as 2016, and drones have been used to smuggle various contraband items across borders around the world, from India and Pakistan, for example, or into Azerbaijan from Iran. But what we're seeing now is a revolution in the capabilities inside Ukraine. And we fear that organized crime has woken up to these capabilities and are starting to implement this new types of drones, new technologies, and implement those in their operations.
It mentions a Mexican cartel, this report as well, a Mexican cartel member who reportedly is training in Ukraine on drone flying. How real is the risk of battlefield lessons transferring to organized crime? You touch on that a bit.
It's really important to remember that a drone as a capability is not just a technology that can be taken off a shelf and used by organized crime or criminal groups and gangs. At the heart of the capability rests a person, and the person requires the expertise, the knowledge, and the skills to employ drones effectively. And what we are concerned about, what we have evidence of, is members of Mexican and other Latin American cartels going to Ukraine, fighting alongside their Ukrainian compadres, and not doing so in order to support Ukraine, really, but actually to bring this knowledge, this human capability back into the cartels, and then use this knowledge, skills, and experience against law enforcement. And there's evidence of that having happened already in Ukraine, and then these people going back to Mexico and other Latin American countries.
Let's briefly outline how criminals might use each of these types of drones. We mentioned there's a type for air, for land, and sea.
Sure. There's a number of different ways. I think the most common is for intelligence activities, surveillance, and reconnaissance. So these are drones, small drones that can be equipped with cameras and that can observe law enforcement activities. There are drones that can carry very small items. So the most common of that is contraband smuggling into prisons. Then there are drones that can be used to carry heavier items. So, for example, the Israel-Gaza border the Egypt-Gaza border, drones being used to smuggle weapons across into to supply Hamas. These can carry quite heavy items, so packets of weapons in the the India-Pakistan smuggling. We've had drugs smuggled, many packets of marijuana, methamphetamine, and other types of drugs. So quite heavy items, and usually those are the quadcopter version. What we're concerned about is the winged version of drones being used, which can carry heavier payloads. And we are also concerned, and we're seeing evidence of maritime drones being used, which can be either on the surface or subsurface maritime drones being used to smuggle much larger quantities of drugs or weapons. And then there's always the concern of land drones. And the evolution of land drones in Ukraine at the moment, if weaponized by criminal gangs, is a particular concern because these are very large, can carry much larger payloads, and can be armed. And we would have concerns about those being used by criminal gangs, especially in Mexico, where let's not forget, gangs are already using up-armored civilian vehicles and turning them into what they call beasts, and equipping them with armor, very heavy weaponry, and fighting law enforcement using those. So we fear that we will see a bleed across of the technology from Ukraine into Mexico in the land drone domain as well.
You speak about the human factor in this and the need for expertise in piloting and operations. Could we see some of these criminal networks recruiting even former soldiers or skilled operators?
Yeah, that is a worry. And one of our messages to the international community in this report is we need to focus on assisting Ukraine, who are doing everything they can to ensure that the demobilization and reintegration process for their people coming out of the conflict as they come away from the battlefield is as effective as possible. And we need to ensure that these people, as they come out of their horrendous experiences, don't fall prey to criminal gangs and get recruited and end up in other parts of the world assisting gangs who will be watching these people and looking at that as a potential source of human capital for them into the future.
Paddy, thank you so much again for your insights and your time.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
No pleasure. We'll leave that conversation there with Paddy Jin, CBE, senior expert at the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime, discussing their new report on how drone warfare in Ukraine could influence organized crime worldwide. We often speak of technology making our lives easier. And then there's the dark side of it when it makes life easier for the people we don't want it to make life easier for.
And they seem to be, if they use the ingenuity that they use for good instead of bad, this planet will be so much further ahead.
Yeah.
But human beings are human beings, hey?
Yeah.
Bizarre.
Every voice matters. Every moment counts. Celebrate life with Channel Africa. The African perspective. Now in your pocket.
Right, let's go to East Africa, where the death toll from a landslide in western Kenya's Rift Valley has risen to 26, and this is following heavy rains on Saturday. 25 people are still said to be missing. The government has deployed military planes and disaster response specialists to conduct a search and rescue operation. Hundreds of people have been killed in recent years in landslides and flooding in Kenya. For the latest, we're now joined by our Kenyan correspondent, Alex Kairi. Alex, thanks for joining us. What do we know? What's the latest? We've got this figure of 26 people who sadly lost their lives, but many still missing. Is that still the figure?
That's the figure as it is right now, but we are expecting an update in the next maybe 1 hour. But so far, apart from the government agencies and military, we have a Red Cross on the ground that was actually the first responder after this happened on Saturday. And from what we understand is that the locals are blaming the state for slow response, because largely that search and rescue was being carried out by Red Cross for the better part of Saturday until yesterday, when the government deployed the military and the police and also the psychosocial support for the victims. But so far, it could be more than 25 people still missing, because the terrain is quite tough. The rains are very heavy, and access to that place where this happened is extremely difficult due to the hilly terrain of that place.
So I guess the needs is huge. Those that have survived have not, I don't know what word to use actually, those that have survived these landslides, what assistance are they getting? Because they're desperate, I'm guessing.
Exactly, and the biggest problem is that, as I said, the place is largely inaccessible, and so many of the locals are displaced. And right now, the state is setting up IDP camps for them, because they cannot go back to their devastated homes, and the rains are still beating very heavily. And so far, it is even feared that there could be more landslides coming in that place and other places, especially in central Kenya, because of the hilly terrain. And these rains were actually predicted, just that there could have been a better way of handling it. And that's why there is a lot of anger from the locals and even the Kenyan side at large, because, as I said, the search and rescue was largely left to the Kenya Red Cross, which was overwhelmed until yesterday, when they realized that it could be worse. That's when the police, the military, and other ministry officials and state officials and agencies were involved. So it is just a case of slow response, and it could have been handled in a very better way, actually.
So, I mean, and I suppose this goes to the knowledge that this is a regular occurrence. This is something that happens often. And the authorities could have been better prepared in advance, even before the response is being brought into question.
Exactly. This we have places that are normally marked as hotspots for landslides, and this includes the Rift Valley and also central Kenya, which usually have experienced these incidents before during the heavy rains. But this was actually very unfortunate, because many least expected that Elgeyo Marakwet, which is in Western Kenya's Rift Valley, could be affected, because previously West Pokot, which is still also in the Rift Valley, had been the worst affected, and also a county called Nakuru, which is the largest in geographically, which has been experiencing such incidents and also destruction of infrastructure, and also the rising lakes, which have displaced so many people. And as we speak, last year's people who are displaced are yet to go back to their homes. And I remember that this was widespread, and the rains have been intensifying in so many parts of the country except Nairobi, which has recently also had similar incidents. But the response has not been so as expected, and this is why there is a lot of backlash from mostly opposition leaders and also the locals who are affected. Except, and as we speak right now, almost 150 people have been displaced in that place in Marakwet, and we expect that this could be more because we're expecting actually more bodies to be recovered from that if and when the agencies access
And
the
very
region.
briefly, I mean, the rains continue. Does that pose a risk that we could see further landslides?
Exactly, and as I said, central Kenya in a county called Murang'a, and also Nyeri County, and also Kiambu County, which is just in the outskirts of Nairobi, are some of the possible areas that could experience these landslides beyond the areas that we're now talking about in Rift Valley and Western Kenya. But the biggest challenge is that whenever the weatherman issues statements and predictions on the possible rains or heavy rains, usually the government waits until such incidents happen without then responding. But this also comes as a secondary response because they normally leave it to the Red Cross and maybe WHO and other agencies that are not linked to the state. And right now, the other fear that had been raised was about the spread of waterborne diseases in many parts of the country, but we are not seeing so much from the government. Yet this warning is actually coming from international agencies like Red Cross, International Committee of the Red Cross, and WHO. Cholera and other water-related bodies diseases are the most feared, so speak, in the country, especially even in the capital, Nairobi, because of waterlogging and bad drainage.
Alex, we're going to have to leave it there, but thanks very much indeed for that update.
Thank you very much.
That's Alex Kairi, our correspondent there, reporting from Nairobi in Kenya about the floods that have been taking place in the Kenyan West Rift Valley. All right, it is 8 o'clock Central African time, which means it's time for the third and final hour of the program this morning. It is the 3rd of November, Asanda Beda.
Yebo, it is that day. New day, new week, and we look in this hour at Tanzania again. Off there, we touched a little bit on that earlier with Mighty Jamie in our roundup rep. We'll be speaking to Channel Africa's reporter Nhlanhla Mahlangu. She traveled to the country and she'll be sharing her experiences with us there. Prices for basic commodities have shot up as well in Tanzania, reportedly. So we'll be looking at that story and more in this hour. Let's get our news first, though. Here's Onele Nsinsi with that update, and then Musubudi Makura will have our sports snippets.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. The meeting of Government of National Unity leaders in South Africa is expected to continue today in Western Johannesburg. President Cyril Ramaphosa has summoned several party leaders in the GNU to the two-day meeting at a secret venue. This follows recent disagreements in the 10-party pact. Last week, Deputy President Paul Mashatile led the parties in signing the newly adopted terms of reference for the GNU. The PSC is amongst the parties whose leaders are attending the meeting. Spokesperson Apa Boy.
We expect that the recently approved terms of reference for the clearinghouse, which essentially deals with disputes within the government, how we are going to handle such. We've recently seen in the past that we would have parties going out accusing each other or attacking government and all of that. Now we have developed a mechanism on how to deal with such issues. So what is expected to be discussed at this party political leaders meeting of the GNU, amongst others, would be the terms of reference.
U.S. President Donald Trump's threat of military action against Nigeria over what he says is extremist manslaughter of Christians has caused alarm in the Western African nation. Nigeria has a Muslim majority north and a Christian majority south. It has denied allegations that Christians are being targeted more than any other group. Nigeria has tried to play down Trump's threat, but says the U.S. must respect its sovereignty. Daniel Bwala is Nigeria's presidential advisor.
If it is a joint action with the Nigerian government, then that's fine, because Nigeria is a territorial country, right? It's a sovereign country. And I don't think diplomatically it would be right to invade a country without collaboration with that country, especially if that country is your partner in the fight against insurgency. Where you see that kind of intervention is where there is an intelligence assessment that that country is in fact the one fueling the crisis for which the Americans want to intervene. This is not the case with Nigeria.
Trump has told reporters on Air Force One that he would not allow the large number of deaths to continue in Nigeria.
They're killing record numbers of Christians in Nigeria. And they have other countries very bad also. You know that part of the world very bad. They're killing the Christians and killing them in very large numbers. We're not going to allow that to happen.
The death toll from a landslide in western Kenya's Rift Valley has now risen to 26 following heavy rains on Saturday. 25 people are still said to be missing. The government has deployed military planes and disaster response specialists to conduct a search and rescue operation. Hundreds of people have been killed in recent years in landslides and flooding in Kenya, with scientists saying climate change is causing more intense and frequent extreme weather events. Lastly, British police say a 32-year-old man is now being treated as the only suspect after a mass stabbing on a train in England on Saturday. A second man who was detained at the scene has been released. The attack, in which 10 people were wounded, is not being treated as a terrorist incident. The BBC's Tom Simons.
Eyewitnesses have told us that most of the injuries happened in carriages in the middle of the train, so they scrambled to safety at either end of the train and from there onto the platform when it arrived. One said it was like being trapped in a box you couldn't get out of.
The train is now a crime scene, and police said a 32-year-old black British man from Peterborough, where he boarded the train, was in custody. Currently, they are not discussing why the attack might have happened.
For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News. I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And in your sports news this hour, Mandla Mashimbi sees a bright future despite South Africa's World Cup heartbreak, while Erling Haaland scored twice to help move Manchester City up to second in the Premier League. Details of these and other stories coming up at 8:30.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
5 minutes past 8 Central African Time. We go to Tanzania now, where prices for basic commodities have shot up in the country following days of election-related unrest, with fuel prices tripling. President Samia Suluhu Hassan was declared the winner of Wednesday's poll, which the opposition described as a mockery of democracy. The military remains deployed in several parts of the country where tensions are still high. Movement is restricted and much of the country remains in the dark following an internet and electricity blackout. It is expected that President-elect Samia Suluhu Hassan would be sworn in later today. We're joined in studio now by Channel Africa's reporter Nhlanhla Mahlangu, who travelled to Tanzania to cover the elections last week. Good morning, Nhlanhla. How are you, colleague?
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Your experience then, please share it with us in terms of you flying into Tanzania and what actually transpired in your journey.
We flew into Tanzania on Monday evening, got there around 2 o'clock in the morning, went to the hotel around about 8ish, went to INEC to try get our accreditation. When we get there, we are asked a whole lot of questions, as to who we're dealing with, because they want us to liaise with that particular individual.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where the cracks then started showing, because all along there wasn't anybody that we were dealing with, because what we did, we applied for accreditation online.
Mm-hmm.
So everything was done on the system, right? So they try call the INEC officials to just, double check, first of all, if our names appear on the list.
Mm-hmm.
And they are told that they are checking, but as they are checking, they're not finding any names. In fact, they said they found that Channel Africa as a station has been approved to cover the elections, but not the names. And then we started questioning that. How do you then approve the station and not the individuals? Because it is the people that are supposed to be there to cover these elections. Nonetheless, we are there. They called the people. I think they called about 3 different people.
Mm-hmm.
One person shifting the blame to the next one. Okay, check under this list, check under this list. And then eventually we are told that our names really are not on the system. The details that we filled probably were not all the required details that we're supposed to submit. We were told to maybe go back to the hotel and then they will try remedy the situation, right? So we leave INEC and then we head back to the hotel. As soon as we get to the hotel, we log onto the system to check, because when we left South Africa, we did check, and we got the notification that all the details that were supposed to be submitted were submitted, and our registration was complete, right?
Yeah.
And we tell the person on the other line that it says that the details are complete. And then this person is insisting, no, it can say the details are complete, but I am telling you that, the stuff that you guys didn't fill. And then we ask, what sort of stuff? Because you need the accreditation letter, you need the press card, you need the picture of the person that is coming to Tanzania, and all those things were submitted. And they were like, unfortunately, there's nothing we can do. And I was like, okay, then what do we do then? And they're like, maybe go to the embassy or go to the Foreign Affairs Department, because those are the people that can assist at this last juncture. And I was like, but it's like 24 hours before the elections. Even if we head to the embassy, who's going to assist us? I mean, these are Tanzanian elections, not South African elections.
Yeah.
I'm just not seeing how officials who work in the embassy will be able to intervene and assist us, Nonetheless, we are told that, unfortunately, without the press card, then it just limits us. Then we can't cover the elections. Mind you, we are there to cover the elections. Our editors are waiting for us to be filing stories, updating what is happening on the ground. And we decide, you know what, because we don't have the accreditation, but it shouldn't just limit us. Let us just maybe go around and just get a sense of how people are feeling. It's a few hours before the elections. We go around asking people. People were basically going on with their businesses. There was no sense of an election is taking place,
were you able to speak to any of the ordinary Tanzanians?
We were, as much as they were afraid to speak on camera and on the recorders that we use. We would ask questions like, are you excited about the vote? And they'll be like, yes, we are. Are you voting? Yes, we are. Just one word answer, but nothing further than that, but we were able to get a sense of how people are feeling.
How freely were you able to move about in terms of trying to get the sense of the ordinary Tanzanians and their experiences, or at this point, whatever their expectations are before going to vote?
Because it was a day before the elections, so things were still calm in the country. There wasn't even a sign that, violence was going to break out. So we were quite free to move around, to talk to people and gather their thoughts, right? Then come election day. We wake up in the morning, but we can sense that it doesn't feel like it's an election. The streets are completely deserted. There's nobody on the street. And I asked the people who work at the hotel how far the voting stations are from the hotel. And then they tell us there's 2 just around the corner, And then I told my colleague, because I was with a colleague from the Chinyanja service, Tamo, then maybe let's rather just go pass by these voting stations. I mean, we've got nothing to lose. We're just passing. It's not like we will get into the voting station and actually, talk to the people there. And as we are passing, I see there's quite a movement of military cars on the road, right? We go past this first polling station, and there were literally 2 people at that polling station. Majority of the people that were there were the support staff and the party agents. Well, one party agent, because the other political parties were barred from partaking in these elections. And that was like a red flag, because Dar es Salaam is the hub of Tanzania. You would expect that the city center is buzzing, the queues are long, there's people that are excited to cast their votes. We passed this first polling station, and as we are heading to the second one, I tell my colleague that, I'm feeling a bit uneasy, because these military cars that are passing, I don't know whether they are passing to monitor, any events that will probably unfold, or what. That's when we got a wind that actually in some parts of the country, protests have broken out. And I'm like, I think that particular one, you can see there's like 3 military vehicles, and it's those big ones, not those small ones. And with the military personnel, they sit at the back of the van, so there's like probably 10, 12 military police with guns. And I'm like, it doesn't feel okay. I mean, we just going to pass, and you can see the streets are deserted. It's just only us, just 2 women walking around the streets of Dar es Salaam. It's a red flag on its own. So I tell my colleague, let's rather just go back to the hotel and just monitor from there and hear what is happening around the city. And as we get there, the hotel manager tells us that, we need to stay put. No, as we get back to the hotel, there's a police car that is just parked outside the hotel.
Yeah.
And then shortly after that, internet goes off. That was around about 10 o'clock, right? And I'm thinking, no, it'll probably come back, And the hotel manager tells us that it's not safe for you to go out. Please, ladies, just stay put in the hotel. Even the staff that is supposed to be on duty, they didn't make it to work. And then that's when you realize how serious this was, because he was telling us that further down the city, the roads have been cordoned off, so nobody can actually leave the city and no one can come into the city. Right. So we sit in this hotel with people that are now panicking, because there's people also that are supposed to check out and go to the airport, and we get reports that some flights have been cancelled. We sit in the hotel, we're like, okay, maybe let's monitor the channels at the hotel. But even the channels at the hotel, are not really flighting what is happening out there. It's like there was just a complete blackout. And it's very unrare, because when you go to the various countries that we go to, several channels that are allowed to show on the TV. Local channels usually dominate. You'll find your other international channels, but local channels predominantly showcase on local televisions. But at this particular hotel, it was a Kenyan television station that was flighting the stuff. And mind you, it's in Kiswahili, so also, language is a bit of a challenge. But then they crossed to one reporter of theirs who this channel that is based in Kenya, and then that's when we start hearing that actually things are happening in the city center, and it's bad, and it's bad. So we sit there, no access to the outside world now, because internet has been shut down. We can't even relay this information that, we can't, first of all, leave the hotel. Secondly, there's just no way for us to communicate. We are just stuck in this hotel.
The communication that was issued by the government of Tanzania regarding the curfew, number one, number two, that people should stay at home and work from home remotely for a bit. How was that being spread if the internet was shut down? How were they able to communicate? Because we were reporting on our side, government is saying this to the people, but yet we also knew that there's no internet.
It was word of mouth, to be quite honest, because even the hotel staff that when the manager realized that his staff is not arriving at work, that's when they started communicating among themselves that actually we were warned that, there will be protests across the city. So it just makes sense that people are not arriving at work. The curfew initially, when we heard about it, remember we heard about the curfew when we were outside of the hotel, when we were making our way to the first polling station. And only when we got back to the hotel, that's when the manager tells us that there's actually a 24-hour curfew that's been put up. And shortly, because now the internet is shut down, and then he comes back to us, because we were actually just sitting by the reception area, because there was just so much uncertainty there, because you see other people that are in the country as tourists, as visitors, also not being able to go to the places that they were supposed to go to. And then the manager tells us that the curfew has been extended, and we're like, okay, because now we can't get calls, we can't make calls, everything is just completely down. How are you finding out that this curfew has been extended? And then luckily for him, I don't know how he was able to do it, but he was able to make direct calls outside, not outside of Tanzania, but just outside of where we were. So that's when the information then started trickling into all the other guests at the hotel.
So fast forward then to the time now you now return, and voting has taken place around Thursday and Friday. What was the mood there like, and were you at any point scared for your lives?
To a certain extent, but I think what made things easier for us is that we were in a confined place, because we were told that we cannot leave the hotel. You just have to stay in your rooms, don't go loitering outside of the hotel, because also it's just not safe. Remember, the streets are deserted. There's nobody there to even just have a conversation with about what is happening, because you are just keeping to your room. So we are sitting there, internet is still down, and then the elections, remember, were on Wednesday. Then Thursday at around 1 p.m. they opened the internet for like 30 minutes. Right, that's when we were quickly able to just send messages, to our superiors, to our families, that we actually safe. It's just that internet was down for a bit, and then shortly after that 30 minutes, then it went off again, and then we started realizing that things are bad. But when we got on to switch on our phones and actually get to see what was happening, it was shocking, because we could see that some buildings were being burnt, some houses of politicians were targeted, there was just loitering on the street. It was just an uncertain time that we found ourselves in.
But we're going to have to leave it there. We'll get more analysis on the story in terms of Tanzania, as we are going to be speaking to somebody from the SADC Secretariat as well to share their views. But thank you so much for your bravery as well, and we're so happy that you're back with us safely.
I'm so glad to be back. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. That's our reporter here at Channel Africa, Nhlanhla Mahlangu, who recently traveled to Tanzania to cover the elections that took place there. This was last week, Wednesday, and they're back with us safely. They returned on Friday.
The voice of the continent, now online, with all your sports fixtures, lifestyle, and more. Start your day right with Channel Africa Breakfast.
That smells delicious.
Live, 5 days a week.
Well, the African Commission on Human Rights, People's Rights says that it's following with deep concern the human rights situation that's unfolding in Tanzania following the October 29 general elections. In a statement, the Commission expressed worry over the reports of widespread turmoil following a series of post-election protests. Tanzania's Electoral Commission has declared Samia Suluhu Hassan the winner of the country's presidential election, securing a sweeping victory and amid growing calls for electoral reform. Hundreds of people are feared dead following consecutive days of unrest. Now, to speak to us is Professor Kula Ismail Teletsane, who's the Director for the Organ on Politics, Defense and Security Affairs at the SADC Secretariat. Professor, thank you very much indeed for joining us and welcome to the program.
Peter, good morning. Good morning to your viewers. Thank you.
You must be very concerned with what's playing out in Tanzania at this time. What is the SADC view of what's playing out?
Yes, Peter, SADC deployed a mission in Tanzania. The view at the moment cannot be as expressed, and I'll tell you why. It's not that I'm running away from your question. We deployed a mission to Tanzania. So I was in Tanzania for a few days, and unfortunately, I had to leave the team to go to Madagascar. As you may be aware, what happened in Madagascar. So I have since been out of Tanzania. But the reason why I cannot answer your question now is that the mission is ongoing, and it will be very difficult for me to pronounce myself until the head of mission and his team finalize and release the report, which should come out very shortly.
Was the mission allowed to move freely around the country following the elections and being able to observe what's been going on?
Peter, I was informed the mission was able to move around on the day of the elections. In fact, we deployed before the elections, a week before the elections. We managed to move around and meet various stakeholders. On the day of the election, in certain parts of the country, there was a bit of a challenge for the mission to move around because of the police who wanted accreditation. Others, even with the accreditation, it was difficult for the mission to move around. But I have just looked at the report now as it is going to be released, and those details are there, Peter, and I will share it with you as soon as the report is released.
It is concerning to see these kinds of developments, unrests, but in the lead up to the election itself, where you see major opposition figures being barred from elections, doesn't set a good precedence for elections in the SADC region.
Peter, you are correct. We observe, as I have told you, we don't only observe elections during the polling day, we observe elections way before that and even past the announcements of the results. Yes, those are the things that we observed. And as I have stated to you, they will come out in the report. They are there in the report that will be released. And I think the report should be the preliminary report. Remember, Peter, normally we release preliminary report 2 days after the elections, but given the challenges that we experienced in Tanzania, that could not happen. So the report will now be released online. I think today it should be out.
A lot of people will be saying, you know, we've had SADC reports before. How much weight do they carry in the end? Your report will come out. We found, for example, a report from the SADC team that observed the Zimbabwe elections, and those elections were found wanting in many respects, but nothing happened. So does this report that's going to come out actually matter in the end?
Peter, that's a very good question. When we release the report is not binding, sadly, Peter. We release the report, and it is incumbent to the country to look at the recommendation and implement those recommendations, even though the report is written following the SADC principles and guidelines governing democratic elections, of which all member states agreed with. But unfortunately, the report is just a recommendation. The country as a sovereign state, it's free to implement recommendations or not to implement recommendations. There is no recourse, Peter. Thank you.
Of elections in the SADC region recently. You talked about Madagascar, even though there wasn't an election per se, but are you concerned about what some might describe as a regression in the democracy in the SADC region at this time? Because we are seeing each election in a number of areas being brought to question.
Peter, it is concerning, and what is even more concerning now, it is the involvement of the youth in all this protest, and it is going to spill over to many countries. I think, yes, it is a concern for me, for SADC regions, in many more elections that we are going to observe in the future.
What can be done?
Peter, what needs to be done, we need a dialogue. These countries need a dialogue, and they have to be honest among themselves when they go into this dialogue as to is the old way of doing things still holding on today, or we need to change how we do things. And unfortunately, if you look at your SADC guidelines and principles governing elections, it talks about a number of things. It talks about the free elections, the fair elections. And we need that dialogue to ask ourselves as to whether are we conducting our elections freely? Are they fair? And that is a dialogue, unfortunately, that is painful, that all these countries has to go through.
They always say that prevention is better than cure. Is SADC taking some steps ahead of time to ensure that the ire of the Gen Zs doesn't reach the points that we're seeing now? Because it does seem they now have a standard response to things that they see that they feel are not right.
Peter, that's a good question, but now the issue here is that when you talk about SADC, it's about 16 countries. At the end of the day, SADC can come up with something. SADC can address it. It's up to individual countries to deal with it when it suffers. It's up to individual countries to buy into whatever the idea you put on the table. And it's very difficult, Peter, to have 16 countries or even more than 16, even 2 countries to agree on certain things, because countries differ on how they see these things.
This sounds like either the SADC protocols must change, or that the ones that are there need to be given more power.
The protocol, Peter, I think it's good enough. Your second thought there, I would tend to agree with it more. You need more. It need more power and maybe some form of enforcement. You see, Peter, if I tell you you should not drive more than 60 kilometers per hour on this road, but I don't tell you what will happen to you if you do, you will continue to overspeed because nothing is going to happen to you.
Professor, we wait with bated breath for the report from your mission in Tanzania, but thank you so much for speaking to us and telling us what you could at this time. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Peter. Keep well. Thank you.
That's Professor Kula Ishmael Teletsane, who's the Director for the Organ on Politics, Defense and Security Affairs at the SADC Secretariat. So, Asanda, we heard from Nhlanhla. Yeah. She described a chaotic situation,
right,
and a heavy hand, to say mildly, by the authorities. SADC is, I suspect, concerned, and we'll hear from them a little bit later on today, one hopes. But let's see where this goes. It's not a great picture.
No, it's not a great picture. Yeah, it's not. And I mean, the security personnel, whatever was deployed in the cities, does not match the situation as far as what Nhlanhla was describing in what she saw. I mean, it was like you're deploying what you would send to war for elections.
Shutting down the internet is always a clue that there's something to hide. For me, that's standard. Anyway, it's 8:30, which means it's time for your news headlines as we say good morning once again to Onele Nsinzi.
SABC News headlines. The African perspective.
Thank you, Peter. The African Commission on Human and People's Rights says it is following with deep concern the human rights situation that is unfolding in Tanzania following the October 29th general elections. A meeting of Government of National Unity leaders in South Africa is expected to continue today in Western Johannesburg. President Cyril Ramaphosa has summoned several party leaders in the GNU to the two-day meeting at a secret venue. And U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened U.S. military action in Nigeria over the treatment of Christians. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Mtsinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's now check in with the world of sports. Here's Musubudi Makura to give us an update.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Asanda. We'll start with this story. So the New York City Marathon made history on Sunday with a course record set in the women's competition and the closest race ever on the men's side, which was decided by a fraction of a second. So Helen Obiris of Kenya broke the women's record, while compatriot Benson Kipruto won the men's race by edging Alexander Mutiso by 300ths of a second. So Kipruto as well as Mutuso separated themselves from the chase pack in the men's race heading into the 24th kilometer. Kipruto, who was running the New York Marathon for the very first time, finished in a time of 2 hours 8 minutes and 40 seconds, while Obiri, who was running this race for a third time, having won it back in 2023, finished in a time of 2 hours, 19 minutes and 51 seconds. She was also running the 2022 winner Sharon Lokedi until Obiri pulled away from a country mate in the final mile, surging ahead as well as winning easily by 16 seconds to best the previous course record of 2 hours, 22 minutes and 31 seconds that was set by Margaret Okayo back in 2003. On to some cricket news rather. So South Africa's Proteas women's coach Mandla Mashimbi has made a bold claim that they will win the World Cup in the near future, following a final heartbreak last night as they fell short of a historic victory. Now they'll have to wait a few more years to try again after they lost to tournament co-host India by 52 runs at the D.Y. Patil Sports Complex in Navi, Mumbai, in front of a packed and partisan crowd. Now, Captain Laura Volfard scored another century in a valiant 299-run chase, but once she was dismissed for 101, the writing was pretty much on the wall, and Coach Mandla Mashimbi explained her importance in this team.
Laura has shown a great deal of fortitude in terms of our mental fortitude and in terms of her talent and in terms of how she led the team as well. And she's also grown in this tournament, and that's why I'm saying going forward this team will be even better, will be even stronger. The tight unit will be even stronger as well. So yeah, I've got no doubt, in the next World Cup we'll give it a good go.
As also Mashimbi emphasized as Mashimbi has emphasized all tournament long, he says a happy environment within the group has been what has got them so far. He also says he's identified the areas that need strengthening when they return home to make sure they come back even stronger in 4 years from now.
When people are happy in an environment, they're able to do what these girls have done this whole tournament. And I mean, the proof is in the pudding with regards to that in terms of the performances that the girls have put on throughout the tournament as well. But at the end of the day, if it is not meant to be, then it's not meant to be. We just have to accept and grow and learn from it and make sure that when we come back and we get another crack at it, we give it a real good go at it.
On to football news now. Erling Haaland scored twice to help move Manchester City up to second position on the Premier League standings with a 3-1 victory over Bournemouth yesterday. So Haaland's astonishing scoring record is now showing no sign of slowing down, with his first two half strikes either side of Tyler Adams' equaliser and followed by Nico O'Reilly's third, taking his tally now to 13 in 10 games this season and just 2 away from 100 league goals. The goal-scoring machine celebrated his first strike with a robot celebration position, but was denied the chance of a hat-trick when he was substituted in the final 10 minutes, with his Man City total now standing at 141 goals in 159 appearances. And finally, Canada's Victoria Mboko clinched her second career WTA Tour singles title yesterday after outlasting Christina Buska over a 3-set battle in the Hong Kong Open final. The 19-year-old number 3 seeded, the third seed at this year's tournament, forced the first break of the match in the 6th game to lead 4-2, only for her opponent to pull it back 3 games later. Now, the Spaniard was broken again in the 12th game, though, and lost the set 7-5. But the world number 68 saved a match point in the second set tiebreaker on the way to taking that tiebreaker 11-9. Mboko tamed Bosca's serve in the opening game of the deciding set, though, and broke her opponent once more in the 7th game before serving out 7-5, 6-7, 6-2 victory after 2 hours and 51 minutes on court. And that's a wrap from the sports desk at The Sawa. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, our email address is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Alternatively, give us a call. The newsroom line is +27 11714 4459. I'm back with more sports news in the next hour with the On The Move team for Channel Africa Sport. I am Mosibu Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Where Africa's voices rise with stories that matter. We lead the conversation.
Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
Let's now find out what's happening in the world of business. Here's Chandugo Ligege to bring us up to speed.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Prices for basic commodities have shot up in Tanzania following days of election-related unrest, with fuel prices tripling. President Samia Suluhu Hassan was declared the winner of Wednesday's poll, which the opposition described as a mockery of democracy. The BBC's Akisa Wandera has the details.
Tanzanians are now paying more for basic goods as the country reels from protests that began on Wednesday. Many fuel stations remain closed, especially in the commercial capital, Dar es Salaam. Some believe the shortages are deliberate, aimed at limiting movement and preventing protesters from mobilizing. Shops and markets remain closed in some areas, and food prices have soared for those lucky enough to find supplies. The military remains deployed in several parts of the country where tensions are still high. Movement is restricted and much of the country remains in the dark following an internet and electricity blackout.
Economist Dr. Azar Jamin says small businesses are finding it extremely difficult to secure capital. South Africa experienced another spike in business liquidations in September. There was a 23.9% increase in the number of businesses closing down. Dr. Jamin says that big businesses get more support, which contradicts government's goal to boost small businesses.
There is indeed a complete divergence between the oft-stated desire to promote entrepreneurship and small business activity, partly because small businesses proportionately create far more jobs than do big businesses. But in reality, we find that there are huge obstacles to small businesses actually succeeding. And one of these is the fact that they find it extremely difficult to access capital, to borrow money.
The legal battle between the Socio-Economic Rights Institute, SERI, and South Africa's city of Johannesburg is set to continue in the High Court today. The matter relates to the removal of unregistered informal traders from parts of the city centre. The parties met at the court on Friday but failed to reach an agreement, resulting in the matter being postponed. The city started removing informal traders who it says are operating illegally and in areas not designated for trading. However, traders have accused the city of violating their right to earn a decent living. Johannesburg Mayor Dada Morero says Home Affairs needs to verify informal traders before they can be allocated new operating spaces.
The city has a strong case, and we believe that the proposals that we presented to Siri, which the judge also requested that we submit to him, are likely to form part of the judgment because they are fair, they're genuine, and the intention is really, firstly, to ensure that we strengthen informal trading by ensuring that it's in the right places, in safe places, in designated areas, so that the city can give them the support through its programs.
The Western Cape government in South Africa has been hosting the 12th Regional Leaders Summit at the Cape Town International Convention Centre under the theme Growth Through Economic Resilience. The biannual multilateral gathering of delegates of 6 international partner regions will continue until Friday. Premier Alan Winde.
The multilateral forums are made up from the 7 regions, and this is our own province, the Western Cape. There's Bavaria from Germany, Georgia from the United States, Quebec from Canada, Sao Paulo from Brazil, Shandong from China, and Upper Austria from Austria. And we will focus on various areas of cooperation, like investment cooperation, trade collaboration, infrastructure development, technology and innovation, economic opportunity and workforce development, cultural capital, and sporting excellence.
Flight delays have affected airports across the U.S. as the government shutdown continues into a second month. There are disruptions for travelers in New York, Texas, and Chicago. More than 10,000 air traffic controllers have been working without pay throughout the shutdown, but some are calling in sick. U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy.
We're already stressed in that we don't have enough controllers in our system. And this shutdown, when we have staffing triggers where they're not coming in because they're funding their families and food on their tables, that makes it more difficult because we're already short. They're making decisions to feed their families. I'm not going to fire air traffic controllers. I have loved them and supported them as they're trying to go through this process, and it's challenging for them. They need support. They need money. They need a paycheck.
Taking a look at financial indicators, $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,436 naira, Botswana 13 pula 70. Kenya, the dollar is 128 shilling 20. Zambia 22 kwacha 8. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 38. In Russia 79 rubles 55. India 80 rupee 80. China 71.12. South Africa 17 rand 31 cents. $1 is 76 pence to the British pound and 87 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is at $4,014. Platinum at $1,599 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil at $64.98 a barrel. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chanduko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Listen in on Channel Africa.
Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Right, let's take a look at this story now. South Africa's Deputy President, Paul Mashatile, has reaffirmed the government's commitment to strengthening transformative legislation, including broad-based black economic empowerment, otherwise known as Triple BEE, and this to better support disadvantaged and young South Africans. Speaking at the inaugural Youth Investment Indaba in Johannesburg, Mashatile said that the government will maintain its focus on transformation policies whilst improving the reinforcing of them to broaden economic inclusion. Channel Africa's Michael Mbewe reports.
Hosted by the National Youth Development Agency under the theme Road National Youth Fund, the investment Indaba convened leaders from government, the private sector, development institutions, and youth-led enterprises to drive youth-focused investment and inclusive economic growth, focusing on fostering dialogue, innovation and collaboration to break down barriers that limit young people's full participation in South Africa's economy. Speaking to the media, Mashatile said the Triple BEE legislation is meant to transform the lives of the disadvantaged, including the youth, and it's here to stay.
The government has started looking at most of this transformative legislation, including Triple BE, with the intention to reinforce them, make them work better. So where there are challenges, we'll deal with them. The point I was making is that we can't drop transformative legislation. If there are challenges, we fix. Triple BE is a very important transformative legislation to empower the previously disadvantaged people, and therefore it will be kept. It will be improved to make sure that we empower more and more people, including the young people who are here today.
Over $5 billion US has been set aside for the Transformation Fund initiative. However, questions have been lingering in the court of public opinion on the availability of the funds. In response, Mashatile affirmed that the plan has already been set in motion and being championed by South Africa's Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Pakstawu.
Yes, the Transformation Fund has already been launched. It's led by Minister Pakstawu, DTIC. So the point I was making is that the NYDA must also engage the Minister and the DIC to be able to benefit from that Transformation Fund, to be able to capitalize their own youth fund that they have launched, which they have now started the campaign to bring all DFIs, private sector, everybody. We support that.
For the youth, access to funding is a nightmare with so many bureaucracies and red tapes along the way. Mashatile assured the youth that government is working on the matter.
Indeed, that is what we are currently doing to make it easier for young people to access funding. We're dealing with all these regulatory burdens to ensure that there is ease of access to utilizing these resources. Young people have complained before about access, and we are going to make sure that indeed they are able to access these funds, because funds are there, young people have ideas, and we must make sure they can access these funds.
He also urged young people to seize opportunities in the digital economy.
Well, we are in the digital economy already. That's why I was making the point to the young people here that they must be in that space. Technology is advancing. They must not be left behind. And the NYDA is going to make sure that they mobilize young people to be able to be involved in that sector as well. They come with innovative solutions and so on, so that they can then access funding in that area of the digital space. It's very important as we are in the digital economy.
NYDA's Executive Deputy Chairperson Bonga Makanya outlined his ambitious plan of creating thousands of jobs through this initiative to Mashatile.
DP, we want to create over 20,000 direct jobs using this fund and over 100,000 indirect jobs. This will help build sustainability for the agency, but most importantly, we want to see a new layer of businesses in South Africa that are as a result of the NYDA. We want to see a new Seriti. We want to see young black companies that are thriving, that are big, that are playing in strategic sectors, and we believe that through the NYDA, through the DFI's representative today, the DBSA, the IGC, the PIC, we can realize this is a reality.
Some of the youth are optimistic that the project this time will be beneficial to meet their entrepreneurial aspirations. Here is Nkosinati Mboniso from a company known as K2 Africa.
We're hoping that the government empowers us as the youth and makes opportunities available to us, because there's a lot of red tape in terms of procurement in government space, and not many opportunities are being provided to the youth, because we are very passionate, and sometimes policies take long to be passed and there's delays in the budget. So we're hoping that things are being fast-tracked, that we manage to empower ourselves as the youth.
Michael Mbewe, Channel Africa News, Johannesburg.
Wake up with gratitude, hope, and the African spirit. Channel Africa, now easier to access than ever before. WhatsApp us on +27 63 406 9126. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
The United Nations has called for an immediate ceasefire in Al Fasher, the capital of Sudan's North Darfur region, following its capture by the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. The UN has warned that the fall of the city marks a dangerous turning point in Sudan's civil war, which has already claimed tens of thousands of lives. Channel Africa's Lebogang Mabange has more.
The United Nations says the conflict in Sudan is worsening with new waves of violence and deepening humanitarian suffering. Speaking at the UN Security Council briefing, Assistant Secretary General for Africa, Martha Ama Akia-Pobi, painted a grim picture of the situation on the ground.
The conflict in Sudan has deteriorated even further. It has caused widespread suffering and new surges of horrific violence. After more than 500 days under siege, the city of El Fasher in North Darfur has been captured by the Rapid Support Forces. Only small pockets of resistance remain. Other parts of the country have not been spared from the relentless violence. In recent weeks, fighting has intensified in the Kordofan region.
Pobi said civilians are facing unimaginable hardship with communications cut off and widespread reports of atrocities.
Communications have been cut off. The situation is chaotic. In this context, it is difficult to estimate the number of civilians killed. Despite commitments to protect civilians, the reality is that no one is safe in El Fasher.
The UN warns that the fighting is spreading to new regions and the risk of mass atrocities, ethnically targeted violence, and sexual abuse remains extremely high. The Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator Tom Fletcher urged member states to stop fueling the war and to prioritize peace over political and commercial interests.
Stop arming this violence. Insist that stopping this conflict is more important than any narrow political or commercial interest. Those who want to leave El Fasher must be able to do so safely. Those who remain must be protected. There must be accountability for those carrying out the killing and the sexual violence, for those giving the orders, and those providing the weapons should consider their responsibilities. Humanitarians simply asking that we be allowed to do our jobs and save lives is not working.
Fletcher also condemned the expulsion of key United Nations officials from Sudan, calling it a direct attack on humanitarian efforts to reach millions in need.
So you must demand that we are able to operate everywhere, including by deploying our national and international staff into areas of greatest need. We ask you to use your muscle to create genuine pressure to ensure this. In this context, I am furious that the World Food Programme's country director and emergency coordinator have been expelled by the Sudanese authorities without explanation.
The UN Security Council has expressed grave concern over the escalating violence and urged both warring parties to protect civilians, resume peace talks, and allow unhindered access for humanitarian aid. With more than 14 million people displaced and part of the country in famine, the war in Sudan is now the world's worst humanitarian crisis. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebogang Mabange.
Celebrate life every day. Tune in to Channel Africa. Stay connected through our new website and free mobile app.
Right, it is a little bit before 9 o'clock, which means it's time to find out what's... No, we're going to do that in a short while because we're going to the DRC right now, where negotiations aimed at restoring peace in the east of the country have dragged on for months in the Qatari capital, Doha. It's stalled due to disagreements between the Congolese government and the M23 rebels over key demands to end the conflict. Well, the deadlock has triggered renewed fighting in the north and south Kivu, worsening the already dire humanitarian crisis. Chris Ochamringa picks up the story.
Delegates from the Congolese government and the M23 rebel group are holding talks in Qatar aimed at ending years of conflict in eastern DRC. But even as negotiations continue, fighting has flared up again, violating a ceasefire and threatening to derail the peace process. Each side blames the other for renewed attacks and has vowed to retaliate. Many Congolese citizens say they want peace, but not at any price.
We want peace and support the efforts of our president, but our country should not accept the rebels to be integrated into our institutions and army after a deal is reached.
The DRC government and the M23 rebels were expected to sign a peace agreement on August 18th, but talks collapsed over disputes on rebel withdrawal from captured territories and the release of prisoners. Kinshasa is also demanding that Rwanda withdraw its troops from eastern DRC, but Kigali insists it will only do so after the FDLR militia, composed of Hutus linked to the 1994 Rwandan genocide, are disarmed. The standoff has led some citizens to call for a national dialogue.
We are asking our president to convene a meeting in our country with all the stakeholders in that conflict in eastern DRC to discuss how to resolve it, because the situation is really bad.
Delegates from 50 countries and international organizations recently met in France to support efforts aimed at restoring peace in the east of the DRC. French President Emmanuel Macron announced plans to reopen Goma's international airport within weeks to allow humanitarian flights. The airport was closed in January after the M23 rebels captured the city from government soldiers backed by troops from the Southern African Development Community. 19 soldiers from South Africa, Malawi, and Tanzania were killed in that offensive. The M23 rebels have rejected France's decision to reopen the airport and suggested that the matter be discussed at the talks in Qatar. Millions of people displaced by the long-running conflict in the east of the DRC are yearning for peace, but the government and the M23 rebels have not yet agreed on the conditions that they have put forward to end the fighting. Mutual mistrust and suspicions between them have made the talks drag on and sparked renewed hostilities. Chris Ochamringa, SABC News, Kinshasa.
And now it is time to find out what's going on The Move. And somebody is back from Madagascar.
Yes, indeed, I am back.
How was Madagascar?
It's incredible. It really was. It's a great place. It's a great place.
Oh, man.
There are a lot of issues, but it is a great place.
And value for money, I think, is key here, because a lot of people think about Mauritius and all these other expensive places.
Yeah.
But there are jewels also.
Right, yeah. I mean, the flight was only 3 hours away from Johannesburg, so it's literally just here.
Wow.
Anyway, what's coming up on The Move today? We start over with
You should start by sharing your travel experience in Mohammed.
We're going to start off talking about our gender-based violence focus that, of course, continues. And many times, of course, when we speak about gender-based violence, we speak about the victim's experiences. But there are other traumatic experiences that happen around the victim, those closer to the victims. Their traumas are a little quieter, but they are happening nonetheless. So we're going to be speaking about that, the impact of gender-based violence on those who are close to the victims. And that's a different story that I think hasn't been unpacked yet.
Yeah, that's a powerful story, actually, because a lot of these things even have generational issues.
Absolutely.
That kids later on, what they saw when they were younger, and
And then we move on to our African view. Today's debate will be focusing around gambling, because that is a huge issue, gambling and esports. And the debate topic is, should African governments legalize and regulate online gambling and esports as mainstream lifestyle industries? And of course, we'll have a side that says, yeah, absolutely, that should be possible. It's going to bring in a lot of revenue into our countries. And another side, hey, that's a huge addiction risk that we're running. That's already starting to show its head here on the continent.
And South Africa has a huge debt problem also, so that just exacerbates things. We spoke to someone last week about that, isn't it? They were giving us figures, though, in terms of how much the economy gets pulled back because of it.
And the online stuff, they earn money quicker because it's digital.
Yeah.
If you go to the casinos now, those things of pulling, they stop that, because pressing a button means you spend the money much quicker than pulling
Then
the
pulling
arm.
the lever.
Yeah. So
Wow.
very dangerous. Anyway.
And then we are busy talking and we're not even on air. It's goodbye from us here on Rise and Shine. We'll do this again tomorrow, 6 till 9. I'm Asanda Beda.
Have an awesome day, everybody. Take care. The news is next with Onel and Cincy, and the sports headlines with
Masibuji Makura.
Sure. 8 it up.
SABC News. The African Perspective.